That's all. I mean, to sit here and look at it below 1%. Peter, one more thought, and then I want to go to Rob.
I mean, we're following the policies of the Bank of Japan and the European Central Bank, and how did it work out for them?
Rob, let me bring you in on that point. You know, as you sit with all the experience you've had advising different presidents and so forth, what would you say about the president's call for the Fed to do more here? Is that the right channel? Should he himself be coming out with fiscal stimulus, or do you let the market? What do you think? I'd just love to hear your thoughts.
Well, the fact is that interest rate cuts just don't cut it in this kind of situation. Interest rate cuts encourage people to invest and to buy if they think things are going to get better. They don't have that effect if you're in a downward spiral of expectations, which is where we find ourselves now. So this will have no real
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow, jumper, up and good!
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game. North Carolina at Duke.
Two for the win! No! Tapped up by Moore! And in at the buzzer! Moore makes it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball and TuneIn, hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
First time ever as traders bet the Federal Reserve's emergency rate cut might not be enough to prevent the coronavirus from chilling the U.S. economy. The 10-year yield, 0.99%. We've got the S&P tumbling 80 points, low of the day, down 2.6%. The Dow dropping 736 points, down 2.8%. NASDAQ down 241, a drop of 2.7%. Stocks tumbling, Treasury surging as investors worry the Fed's emergency cut of 50 basis points this morning will not be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. Gold up 3.5% now, $16.43 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.2%, $46.86 a barrel. Brent $51.65 barrel of Brent down by 0.5%. Recapping, we've got the 10-year 0.99%. S&P down 79, down 2.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. Lots going on. Balance of Power continues. And once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. The Federal Reserve earlier today issued an emergency rate cut of 50 basis points. Charlie just told us about that. It was in response, of course, to the coronavirus, with Chair Jay Powell saying we're still in the early stages of seeing the economic effects of the virus.
We are beginning to see the effects on the tourism and travel industries, and we are hearing concerns from industries that rely on global supply chains. The magnitude and persistence of the overall effects on the economy, however, remain highly uncertain, and the situation remains a fluid one.
We welcome now Carl Riccadonna. He's Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Scott Brown. He's Chief Economist for Raymond James. So Carl, I mean, as I look at what Jay Powell did, what the Fed did today, the markets are not reacting necessarily in a positive way. Is that because actually they made a mistake at the Fed, or is it actually the market's catching up with something the Fed knows about?
I don't think it's a mistake from the Fed at all. The Fed is right to move in a proactive fashion, especially with not so many arrows left in their quiver, at least in terms of conventional monetary policy. The concern was when the Fed made the move that when the Fed makes emergency moves, traders ask themselves, what does the Fed know that we don't? And the Fed has a vast network to reach out to find out what's happening. So they, the business contacts of each regional district bank, the folks they call to compile the beige book, for instance, they could reach out to them on extraordinary basis and find out what's really happening in those districts way before it starts to show up in the economic data. And the fact that then Jay Powell talked about those business contacts and the reports back to the Fed in his press conference really did highlight that what the Fed is hearing on the ground is troubling enough for them to take out additional insurance against downside risks.
But Carl, there are two questions. One is there a problem? The other is, do we have a solution to the problem? And Jay Powell in his press conference himself said, you know what, I confess, monetary policy is not going to fix supply chain problems, for example.
Right. So supply chain problems are part of what's happening at the moment, but also there's just this notion of a demand shock. If we're putting in place quarantine measures and travel restrictions and the social distancing measures, then you are going to see those categories, which Jay Powell mentioned, like air travel and hospitality and whatnot, restaurants. So part of this is a supply chain issue, but we have a global capacity glut. So I wouldn't be too worried about the supply chain disruptions lasting for any length of time. What's more important is to patch up any short-term soft patch in economic growth, because if we have a slowdown in GDP, we also have a slowdown in GDI, gross domestic income. And if we have an income lull, then that can cause the economy to stall out on itself. And that's what the Fed's trying to avoid. And we can say that, there's lots of critics out there saying the Fed can't do anything, or what, rates are already low. The incremental change does matter, and we're seeing that already in housing statistics, where we can see people taking advantage of refinancing opportunities or making home purchases because financing costs have come down.
So, Scott Brown, let's bring you in here for your perspective on what the Fed did today, why it did it, and was it the right thing?
Well, again, I think it was the right thing to do. We knew the Fed was sort of leaning towards this way. It had been anticipated by the markets. But as you know, when you see these moves that come sooner and larger than anticipated, you often get the question, what does the Fed know that we don't? I think this is pretty much an insurance move, and it's a large insurance move. Given that the Fed is so close to zero to begin with on short-term interest rates, they really ought to move more aggressively sooner and larger if they think they have to, and that was the case today. But they've also left themselves open to lowering rates again in the future if needed. It may seem to be a little bit overkill given where we are now with the virus, but the efforts to contain the virus, I think, are going to likely have a bigger economic impact. We talk about the social distancing, school closings, the loss in travel, and a lot of that is already apparent. I've talked to a number of friends and relatives about travel situations, and people are very reluctant to travel at this point. I had an ad on my computer over the weekend about one airline offering to waive change fees and so on in order to get people to make the reservation. But we are seeing those reservations drying up, and that's obviously a big concern, especially as we go towards the spring and summer travel season.
Does this move by the Fed, Scott, effectively put the ball back in President Trump in the fiscal court, so to speak? That is to say, we've done what we can do on the monetary side, and a lot of people are saying fiscal can be much more targeted to address some of the issues, particularly the demand issues that Carl was talking about.
Well, we still have some room on monetary policy. We still have another 100 basis points, and then there's forward guidance. That's where the Fed makes a conditional commitment to keep short-term interest rates low for a longer period of time. There is a possibility of more QE. We don't think the Fed really wants to go to negative rates. That seems to be widespread resistance. But then now you're also talking about fiscal policy. We're already at $1 trillion federal budget deficit. If the economy starts to slow down, maybe that goes to $1.5 trillion. Are you going to want to do more stimulus? It might be difficult for Congress to get on board. Typically, you may end up with a mix of tax cuts and increased spending. But with the states, I think, are the ones we really are worried about, because the states all have balanced budget requirements. We saw this during the last downturn. The Obama stimulus had a lot of aid to the states. Those states are all going to be bleeding red if the economy slows down more significantly. So there is a possibility. It's an election year as well, so maybe it'd be difficult to achieve this year, but perhaps next year, depending on who's elected president.
How about it, Carl? Should we be getting ready for fiscal stimulus?
I think we should, especially when we look at the cost of financing that fiscal stimulus is extraordinarily low. So
it's getting lower, too.
Yeah, getting lower.
With the 10-year under 1%.
0.98 as I look at my Bloomberg terminal here. As we think about fiscal stimulus, the problem with fiscal stimulus is it can often be slow to come about. And I think that was part of the reason the Fed took the aggressive measures today. The communique coming out of the G7 conference call was not particularly encouraging about explicit action, rather than saying we'll coordinate on healthcare measures and hopefully fiscal stimulus. Well, hope is not a good plan in an environment like this. So the challenge for policymakers will be to design fiscal stimulus so it is fast and effective. So part of that is simply the healthcare measures, getting enough ventilators, hospital beds, that sort of stuff. That doesn't move the needle on the macroeconomy. In terms of delivering a fast, meaningful fill-up to growth, that's going to be the challenge. And to get that through Congress in the current political environment will be a real challenge.
Okay, many thanks to Scott Brown of Raymond James and Carl Mercadona of Bloomberg Economics. Now it's time to talk about Bloomberg Business Week. So I would just guess you may be going to talk about the Fed. Just
little Fed, little markets, little virus. But as you well know, David, better than anyone, it's also Super Tuesday.
It is Super Tuesday.
There's still one of your partners, Rick Davis. He's going to be along in just a few minutes.
Oh, boy, you're a lucky
make us smarter. Yeah.
Rick is the best. Okay.
Also the CEO of Beachbody. So,
Everybody needs a little break with all this stuff.
I should say, okay. That's coming up on Bloomberg Business Week. That does it for Balance of Power today. This is Bloomberg.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres, ends 18th of March.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming on YouTube, and lots of Purell surrounding us. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week for this Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. I'm Carol Masser, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. Fed to the rescue, Purell to the rescue, but still investors are freaked out.
Investors very, very worried, and with good reason, it feels like, given the headlines that we're seeing. You can see why people are concerned. So we're going to get into that in many, many different ways in the hours ahead. First, let's get a check on where those numbers are. Charlie Pellet's here with an update. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much. Got to begin with the 10-year. Look at that, 0.97% right now. Stocks tumbled, Treasury surged as investors worry that the Federal Reserve's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus, a topic we will be talking about from many angles right here on Bloomberg Business Week throughout the day. At the high of the session, the Dow was up 381 points. Right now, we are at the low of the day, down 808 points. That is a drop right now of 3%. S&P 500 index at 3,003, down 87 points, a decline now of 2.8%. NASDAQ down 269, down by 3%. And again, the 10-year, 0.97%. Gold up 3.4%, $16.43 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude virtually flat now, $46.70 a barrel. Fed Chair Jay Powell saying during a press conference this morning that the U.S. economy remains strong, but the virus outbreak will weigh on activity for some time.
The virus and the measures that are being taken to contain it will surely weigh on economic activity, both here and abroad, for some time. We are beginning to see the effects on the tourism and travel industries, and we are hearing concerns from industries that rely on global supply chains.
And again, recapping U.S. equities at the low of the day right now with the S&P down 83, down 2.7%. Our coverage continues. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. A busy day, to say the least. We're going to talk about the virus from a number of angles, from hiring on Wall Street to earnings, specifically Target coming out and saying the outlook is uncertain.
Indeed, right? So we'll get into that. Also, let's not forget, it's Super Tuesday.
Wait,
so
what?
Exactly. We're focusing on the markets. You can't miss, obviously, the big story of the day, which is, of course, the Fed and that emergency 50 basis point rate cut. But it's also a big deal when it comes to politics here in the United States. Super Tuesday, a lot of delegates will be decided, and it could clarify the Democratic presidential contenders. So we're going to talk about that as well.
And we're also going to catch up with the CEO of Beachbody. They've got 2 million members to their online fitness platform, and we're going to probably talk about the fact that maybe more people are going to be working out at home.
For all your P90X fans.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
Right? All right, so let's set the agenda, though, the Business Week agenda. We got to talk about the markets. We got to talk about the Fed news. Gina Martin Adams is Chief Equity Strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence. She is in our Interactive Brokers studio, along with Dave Wilson, Stocks Editor at Bloomberg News. I want to get into analysis, but just quickly, Dave, set the scene in terms of the selling that we're seeing.
Everything's down.
Yeah.
Everything's down. We can start there. If we look at the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, I mean, it's predictable in a sense that you've got the financial companies among the worst performers on the day, and you talk about a group that gets hit as interest rates come down. They certainly qualify. Technology stocks as well, which is kind of interesting. It may be that people are just kind of selling shares that have done relatively well over time.
Well, those valuations have stayed pretty high.
Yeah, that's true, too.
And let me bring in Gina, because you've done some research on that, right? Saying that some of that big tech, those valuations are still pretty high.
Yeah, I think it's one of the places where investors were really hiding out. And so when you have a day like today where it's just sort of sell everything you have, they naturally are going to get a bit of the downdraft. But when we look at the valuation multiples, This is a group, the FAMIG stocks, the biggest 5 tech stocks, are trading at 1.5 times index valuations. I mean, this is an all-time high, near all-time high, and they really didn't see much valuation movement over the course of the last week. So investors were definitely hiding in that space.
The thing I think we have to ask, and it's a question I've heard, let me just mention, stocks extending their rout. The S&P is now down more than 3%. So are each of the major averages. Something that I keep hearing around the newsroom, it's like, wait a minute. The markets got what the Fed got what they wanted from the Federal Reserve, a very aggressive rate move, and yet now we're down. Is it just a case of yesterday was buy on the rumor, and today it's like, well, wait a minute. If the Fed thinks it's that bad, then okay, what's next?
I think there's a little bit of both of those items in there, but I think the other thing that I would add to that is the markets probably didn't really get what they wanted. The equity market certainly would prefer that the Fed go back to the balance sheet. That's a direct infusion of capital in the financial system. It doesn't require people to go out and borrow. They can get really creative. You know, we saw that with repo over the course of the last year, and you're starting to see LIBOR spreads, OIS spreads widen. You're starting to see repo tighten again. So there's a little bit of angst with regards to liquidity and what's happening in the interworkings of the financial system that I think the Fed could have attacked a little bit more directly. The other thing is, there's a lot of skepticism with respect to how much the Fed really can impact the economy. The Fed can certainly impact market multiples, and this move will create a floor under multiples, hopefully. But what I think everyone's skeptical as to is, is this really going to improve the earnings outlook due to coronavirus? It seems highly unlikely that that's the impact, and that's where we're really focused right now.
Right. I mean, I want to turn it to you, Carol, in part because you were making a very good point as we were trying to get ready for the show and sort of figuring out who we're going to talk to and all these different things. I mean, it feels like been this conflation over the past couple of years that somehow the markets are the economy, and they're not. And that does feel like something that it's worth reminding people about. And candidly, from a political perspective, that certainly is the message that's been sent from the administration in many ways. And it does feel like we're all trying to get our arms around that and maybe losing sight of that delineation.
It's a great point. And it's, if you go to, I was listening to Charlie when we were setting up our show and just kicking it off, Jay Powell saying the economy is still strong, folks, but, the virus is going to weigh on economic activity. So, you kind of get your head around, was Jay Powell and company looking at what was going on in the financial markets or looking at what was going on in the economy?
Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with the comments about economic activity, because he suggested it's going to weigh on the economic activity for quite a bit longer than I think maybe some had been anticipating.
Right.
And when they move with a 50 basis point move like this, intra-meeting, which you mentioned is extremely rare, the signal from that is, ooh, what do you know? Right. What do you know that maybe we don't know? How bad could it actually get?
Right.
And so you have to consider all these different impacts.
Dave, take us back, though, to the financial crisis, because that's the last time that we saw, an emergency rate cut by the Federal Reserve. Does it feel, like I said to somebody, it doesn't feel like the financial crisis, but there's a lot that we don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and you contrast the Fed moving the way they did with the way that the Trump administration had tried to play down the effects of the coronavirus, that it's not that big an issue. So you've got a contrast there, and it's like, for people watching what's going on, they got to be thinking, who knows what? And how come it doesn't all kind of fit together the way it should?
Right, and we pretty much erased almost everything we gained back yesterday.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, real estate and utility stocks holding up relatively well. The home builders are higher. Now, there's a surprise, given that, if interest rates are coming down, it means it gets cheaper to borrow to buy houses. But, there's not a whole lot beyond that really kind of stands out in terms of what's doing relatively well here.
20 seconds. What are you going to be watching in terms of market activity, or what do you think happens from
I think key levels are always really important to watch when the market's bouncing around this much. Key levels are 3,000, then 29.50, and then the key level where we broke at or stopped at last week was 28.60 or so, which is about a 50% retracement of the rally. So I'd watch the key levels first, and then the economic data and indicators second.
All right. And we are going to get a jobs report on Friday, obviously backward looking, but this has all been going on for a little bit of time. Thank you so much. Gina Martin-Adams, Chief Equity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, and Dave Wilson, Stocks Editor. He'll be back in a little bit with his chart and stock of the day. Carol?
All right. The Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, Jason, $13. Chinese airlines are offering tickets at what are known colloquially as cabbage prices as they start restoring seat capacity following drastic capacity cuts enforced by the coronavirus.
A one-way direct trip from Shanghai to Chengdu on Junyo Yao Airlines Company. This Saturday cost just 90 yuan, $13 plus 50 yuan in taxes. That's a 3.5-hour journey, about the same as a flight from New York to New Orleans.
All right.
I think that was put in by Paul Brennan because he likes to go from New York to New Orleans.
I didn't mean to throw you that line with all the... You did well.
Yeah, you did.
I know. No, I really didn't. I was trying to share. All right, let's get a check on world and national news headlines. I promise, I was really just trying to share. Here's Bob Moon.
Both houses of Congress are moving to pass additional funds to combat the coronavirus outbreak. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer told the Senate that bipartisan negotiators are putting the finishing touches on a spending bill.
The agreement is expected to include between $7 and $8 billion of funding. When it comes to Americans' health and safety, there's no reason to be penny wise and pound foolish. I hope and expect we can pass the emergency appropriation through the Senate before the end of the week.
House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer made a similar announcement, suggesting the amount of money might be higher still. At the White House, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Authorities in New York are scrambling to trace the possible source of another reported case of the coronavirus and who else might have been exposed. A 50-year-old man who lives in Westchester tested positive for the COVID-19 virus, and it appears he contracted it through community spread. At a press conference in Albany, Governor Andrew Cuomo said this kind of spread was expected.
So we are now going through possible connections to track down possible connections to find people.
The man works in Manhattan and had not been to China or any of the other countries on the watch list. As a precaution, 2 nearby private schools attended by his children have closed. Billionaire Democratic presidential hopeful Mike Bloomberg says he doesn't know if he'll win any of the 14 states voting on this Super Tuesday. The first time he'll be on the ballot. The founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent Bloomberg LP acknowledged that the only way he can secure the nomination is through a contested convention. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take. By Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful. The
future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Your new neighbour is a musician. His creative peak is at 3 a.m. They're doing roadworks next to your house. A famous teen star moves onto your street. There's always a reason to travel. Fly with Lufthansa's incredible fares around the world to destinations like Nairobi, Cape Town, or Johannesburg. Book now on Lufthansa.com. Conditions apply.
Say yes to the world. Lufthansa.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and good.
This week we have a must-hear game: North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win. No, tapped up by Moore, and in at the buzzer. Moore makes it in.
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The stock market sell-off is deepening, and treasuries are surging, driving 10-year yields below 1% for the first time ever, as traders bet the Fed's emergency rate cut this morning might not be enough to prevent the coronavirus from chilling the U.S. economy. Right now, we have got the 10-year 0.96%. The Dow down 914 points. That is a decline of 3.4%. S&P 500 index down 104 points, back below 3,000, down now by 3.4%. S&P, by the way, at 2984. NASDAQ is slumping 325 points, a drop of 3.7%. 10-year yield, again, worth repeating, 0.95%. We've got gold up 2.9%, higher by $46 the ounce at $16.35. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3% now at $46.85 a barrel. Recapping, stocks selling off with the S&P down 107, a drop there of 3.5%. For the bulls, not such a super Tuesday. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's talk about Super Tuesday because that is happening amid all of this. Rick Davis here with us, partner at Stone Court Capital. His political resume would take us the rest of the segment to outline, but obviously most notably...
So the message is he's an old guy.
Well, that's right. That's
we
right.
should say
Highly
that you
experienced.
have been involved in presidential politics for roughly 40 years.
40 years, yeah. My first presidential campaign really was in the 1980, but I attended the 1976 presidential convention.
Wow.
So
but
I was like right out of the womb, brand new.
Yeah, exactly.
Waving.
You've seen some things.
I've seen some things.
So what are we going to see today? What's different about this Super Tuesday?
Well, one of the things you're going to see today is this really rapid consolidation of this field, and how does that then affect Joe Biden, right? Yeah. Because it's not going to have any effect on Bernie Sanders. His campaign sort of, from start to finish going to be the same thing. No ups, no downs, just Bernie all the time. Bernie and the bros. Joe Biden, he's been all over the map, right? I mean, he was winning all these states we're going to see vote today at one point in time 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And then Iowa, New Hampshire, losses there, losses in Nevada, and then his resurrection in South Carolina just 3 days ago. And now, all of a sudden, he's popping back up to the top of the heap. So,
how did that happen? Why was South Carolina such a big win? I mean, is it a big win in the grand scheme of things?
Yes, South Carolina sometimes decides winners and losers. Okay. Unfortunately, I've had many campaigns that have lost in South Carolina, so I know they can, drive a stake through the heart of any good candidate.
What
is
it?
It's the very first state in the early process, Iowa, New Hampshire, that actually mirrors the nation in some way. It has diversity, it has a bigger population, and so it's a real contest versus this sort of retail organizational effort that you got to do in Iowa and New Hampshire. Okay. So it actually has a bigger impact, and it is the launching pad to much bigger states. And in order to compete in the bigger states, you either need to have a lot of money, like Mike Bloomberg, who's been pouring dough into the TV screens of people in Texas and California and Virginia and Massachusetts and all those places, or you need momentum. And Super Tuesday typically is a momentum play. Nobody can afford to buy Super Tuesday. You can't afford to organize Super Tuesday, but you can have the momentum going into Super Tuesday, and in many cases, that's decisive. And Joe Biden has the momentum.
Right. We should point out Mike Bloomberg, of course, the owner and the founder and majority owner, Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. So that momentum is largely based on Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar to some extent, or at least enhanced by it, right?
What
role did that play?
He had to win in order to get their support, right? If he had not won South Carolina, he'd be endorsing one of them right now.
Right.
So he did the hard stuff, right? He kept the coalition together and hung in long enough to make a win. Those things, it's like piling on, right? I mean, when you get this kind of surge, you want to have people join your campaign, which adds to the narrative that I'm the most electable person. I can be the banner carrier for the Democratic Party.
And electability, I don't know if we've ever heard that word as many times as we have in this cycle, right?
Yeah, it's been from start to finish the one message, because Donald Trump is so unattractive to Democratic voters, right? I mean, there's no close call. And so if you want to appeal to a Democratic primary voter, you want to be the guy who can most easily upset Donald Trump.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Rick. Is Joe Biden the person who can beat Donald Trump? Can Bernie Sanders beat Donald Trump?
Well, that's why this is such an interesting day, because we're in a flux there, right? I mean, Joe Biden, arguably, before the Iowa caucuses, was that guy.
Hang on one second. President Trump is just leaving the White House. We do want to check in and see some of the comments that he's making.
And I did it early. By doing that, that was a big step. Otherwise, many more people would be infected.
NCAA, Mr. President, the NCAA now preparing to say no fans in the stands. Do you think that's the right move? And would you consider
that's a tough move.
Rally to the convention?
When did they announce that? A little while ago?
Yes.
That's a tough move. No, I'm not prepared for that, but let them do what they want to do. I'm hearing more and more about that. I don't think it would be necessary now. That's too bad. Jeff, go ahead. Question. We're watching Italy very closely, South Korea very closely, even Japan very closely, and we'll make the right determination at the right time. We've cut it off, as you know, with numerous other countries. Okay? Say it? They are the hot spots right now.
So the markets are concerned about what markets are not okay? The 10-year
Those are some brief comments from the president. President Trump leaving the White House. There on the White House lawn. Rick Davis still was
a playback, just to clarify that those were not live comments.
And
but,
we'll bring you some of those headlines as they are relevant. Rick Davis still here with his partner at Stone Court Capital. National campaign manager for John McCain's 2000 Republican presidential primary campaign. Has had a number of jobs, including national campaign manager for McCain's 2008 presidential campaign, which goes back to the idea, you know some things about South Carolina. Just to go back. Just to go back,
they left an imprint on me.
Yes.
So, how do you see it playing out? Will we potentially have a race where all of the candidates have some delegates, or is it going to be predominantly between Biden and Bernie, or how do you see it?
Well, the Democratic Party sets up a system to allocate delegates proportionately. So it is easy to see a scenario where today, Bernie, Biden, Bloomberg all come out with delegates, and Elizabeth Warren too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And although her play may only be in places like Massachusetts where she's well known,
right.
You have to get above a 15% overall vote threshold to get delegates. Right now, according to the public polling, Mike Bloomberg hits that in most of these states, and Bernie and Biden do, but Elizabeth Warren's still below that threshold in almost all the states other than her own. So all those people likely will bring home delegates. The question is, how much distance between the front runner and the pack being, Bernie being the front runner right now, and the pack being Biden and Bloomberg, is there going to be created with delegates themselves, right? Because up until this point in time, you've had less than 100 delegates picked. California alone is going to quadruple that. And so the delegate count itself is what we'll be talking about tomorrow, not the polls, not the sort of, how many states are available. It's like, how many raw delegates are you going to have leaving Super Tuesday?
And so after today, we look at the delegate count. What else do we look at on the horizon? Because we've got, keep me honest here, Michigan, we've got Georgia, we've got some other big, important states, right?
Yeah. And I think you've picked up on something that most people tend to miss because they're so keen on following like Super Tuesday. It's really cool. It's 14 states plus American Samoa. I'm still trying to figure out where American Samoa is. And
that's
so,
what Google is for, Rick.
Yeah.
Just going to tell you.
Okay, Google. I'll have that.
Right there.
Note to self.
Remember, I'm a Republican. I was born in the 1950s.
Oh, man.
It was a hard one for me. But I think in this case, in this situation with the Democratic primary, the last 10 states that elect delegates are going to probably be more important than any 10 states right now.
Interesting.
Because by then, it will likely be a 1, 2, or 3 man race, right? And those states could actually determine who has the momentum going into the convention, especially if you don't have someone already with the presumptive delegate totals 51% going into the convention.
So we're going to have a brokered convention?
Well, right now, if Mike Bloomberg continues to spend a lot of money and get delegates, which we would anticipate him doing today, and Bernie doesn't run away with it, and certainly next week, states like Michigan, he's going to do really well in that state. Bernie will.
Yeah.
But Biden's having a great moment right now. So it's kind of a scrambled deck.
Because then it goes back to the South,
like this,
right?
And then it goes back to the South where Biden will be strong. Right. And so you can see a situation where Biden could do really well today, maybe still be a little bit behind Bernie, but not much. Bernie does well next week. Biden does well the week after that. And next thing you know, you've got this muddled picture going into the convention.
Does Warren drop out soon?
I think that she has to be able to do better than just getting delegates in her home state, right? And so she says she's going to go to the convention. She wants to make a point. That's what Bernie did last time against Hillary Clinton, and people didn't like it. But look at now he's leading the charge in this delegate selection process. So, arguably she has a lot of money coming in. She's got a strong group of supporters, and she wants to make a point. Unfortunately, that probably holds some of Bernie's growth capability down a little bit, because if she still holds on to 10 or 12%, that's
right.
Votes likely would have gone to vote Bernie.
All right, only got about a minute left. Rick Davis, history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. What does this remind you of?
This reminds me a lot of the Republican primary in 2016, where we started with 17 candidates. They started with 23. We got it down to about like where it is now, around Super Tuesday. And what happened in the Republican primary was that a lot of these candidates who were not going to win stayed in the campaign, like we were just talking about Elizabeth Warren, and it muddled the picture to the point where we got a nominee, Donald Trump, who prior to becoming the presumptive nominee had never won a single one of these primaries by more than 35%.
Interesting.
So in other words, strange things can happen.
Strange things will happen.
All right.
What
Well,
a
we'll
treat.
be counting on
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Rick
Thank
Davis is a partner at Stone Court Capital, Bloomberg contributor, and just a political expert. Really enjoyed that conversation.
That was great.
All right. Coming up, back to the virus.
Yep, we're going to talk about the virus. We're going to talk about what's going on Wall Street when it comes to recruiting, a fascinating story. In the meantime, let's get a check on your top business stories and an update on the trading day. Here is, once again, Charlie Pellet.
And it is a down day for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. We are looking at a 86-point drop right now in the S&P 500 index, down 2.8%. We've got the Dow tumbling 782 points, down 2.9%. Have been down by almost 1,000 points on the Dow, but again, now down by 796 points. 3% drop there. We've got NASDAQ down 283, a drop there of 3.2%. The day's major story, the 10-year, the yield on the 10-year right now, Treasury surging. We've got the 10-year yield of 0.97%. S&P 500 index on track for its 8th drop in 9 days, following the Federal Reserve's 50 basis point cut of its benchmark rate. Fed Chair Jay Powell saying during a press conference that the U.S. economy remains strong, but the virus outbreak will weigh on activity, quote, for some time.
Of course, we've been carefully monitoring the situation since it first became known and waiting to see how it would evolve. And I think we've come to the view now that it is time for us to act in support of the economy. And once you reach that decision, we decided to go ahead.
And again, the 10-year, 0.96%. Travel-related stocks being hit very hard again today. UAL, parent of United, down 4%. American Airlines Group tumbling 4% as well. Delta Airlines lower by 1%. And among the cruise line stocks today, Carnival Corp down 4.6%. Royal Caribbean tumbling by just about 3.5%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings lower by 5.9%. Recapping equities lower, gold higher by 2.8%. An ounce of the precious metal now at $16.33. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
So this is typically Wall Street's poaching season. This story, by the way, among our most read on the Bloomberg. And the virus, well, it's kind of upending all of that.
Speaking of which, want to bring you one quick headline across the Bloomberg right now related to the virus. Spanish authorities reporting the country's first COVID-19 death. So that
comes just
notable.
after Washington saying it's had its 7th death from the virus here in the United States.
All right, so let's bring it back to Wall Street.
Virus and Wall Street, because it's definitely having an impact here already. Let's talk about the story. It's among the most read. Sorry. It's okay. There's a lot of stuff going on. Lenan Nguyen is our finance reporter at Bloomberg News. She is in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Lenan, talk to us about this story and what typically goes on Wall Street and what's happening because of the virus.
Okay, so what typically happens on Wall Street in February is that people get their bonuses, they get their stocks into their account, and then if they're thinking about making a move, boom, that's the time to do it, right? You got the money, you can take it and run, or you can parlay it into a nice offer and try to get your own bank or your own firm to give you a raise. That's not happening right now because in order to get an offer, you usually have to see people in person to lock in that final offer, right? People don't want to hire candidates if they haven't met them in person.
Right,
makes
sense.
Exactly. And so a lot of what's being done is teleconference, but when it comes to sealing the deal, it's a little tricky if you can't actually see people in person.
So help us understand the geography here, because obviously Asia, and we know this anecdotally and statistically, even at this point empirically, has been in many ways, if not shut down, largely locked down in many ways. What did we learn from Asia, and then how does it sort of transform into Europe and the U.S.?
So what we learned from Asia is that everything is kind of locked down and that things are stalled. And so there are some interview processes that are taking place via teleconference. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to that final hurdle, firms are having to sort of do things like case-by-case approvals to get someone to come physically into the office. They have to do temperature checks in certain lobbies in order to get a candidate in the door. So it's just this kind of extra hurdle that you really have to want to hire a candidate in order to get them through all of that.
And I do wonder about people, especially with the ability to go from the States to Europe or to Asia, right? Like that kind of crisscross, whether or not that really drops. And I do wonder if when everything is over, do they come back and do it, or do they say, we'll just work on it next year?
Yeah, that's a really important point, because it's not just as if Asian candidates are staying in their own region. We have big international firms here, right, people who move across regions. And so a lot of the recruiters we've talked to have said that type of international hiring is definitely going to either be delayed or scrapped altogether.
Right. So, Linan, you and your colleagues are talking to people on Wall Street all day, every day. There's been some great reporting from your team about, sort of the steps that people are taking related to, curtailing travel, curtailing even a little bit of deal making, which is a natural extension of that. What's the most interesting thing you've been hearing as you talk to colleagues or you talk to folks out on Wall Street about what banks are doing? I
think the most interesting thing is what happened today, which is a Fed rate cut. I think that's going to have that's going to have major
nuts, right?
impact across all industries, the insurance industry, rate sensitive industries. That signals, I think, a sense of worry amongst the people that we are talking to. That's kind of bigger than their day jobs. Okay, sure, they're expecting disruptions to their everyday lives, to their jobs. They might have to sit further away from their colleagues or be moved to disaster recovery sites. But I think everyone is thinking about the bigger picture here, which is what's going to happen to the economy, what's going to happen to the world.
Well, and someone, not so informed when it comes to Fed policy said to me, well, they can just hike rates, in a month or so. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. I mean, when the Fed goes to do this, they do it because they really see some concerns about the economic and market outlook. And it's not typical for them then to be like, oh, wait, it's not so bad. That's just not how it works. And, for the Fed to do this when it wasn't a normal Fed meeting, for them to do half a point and be so aggressive, this says something about either their concerns or their concerns about how the virus ultimately impacts the U.S. economy.
That's right. And it's taking the temperature. That's a play on words. But the banks are taking people's temperatures when they get to the building. But also that's showing what the temperature is in the markets, which is, pretty hot.
Right. All right. So where do you think, how does this ultimately sort of get to the bottom line and people's personal bottom lines? Because if they don't change jobs, as you said at the top, often this is using another Wall Street term, sort of the leverage time where people say, I just made this big bonus, you're going to pay me this, or they go back and, use an offer that they're getting. Ultimately, do we see this sort of play through comp going into next year? This could have at least a midterm effect, right?
Yes. One of the recruiters we talked to said if you haven't gotten your bonus yet, probably your firm is going to use the virus as an excuse to reduce your comp. But beyond that, I think people are hunkering down. They don't see a vibrant economic outlook, and so they might be less likely to try and parlay another offer because they don't see anything out there. Right. Activity is just not that high.
Hey, one last question. How easy for the financial firms is it to, if the virus gets to, a pretty serious situation in terms of quarantines here in these major cities in New York, of course, included, for them to set up trading or have trading operations elsewhere and to kind of keep a certain amount of the core activities going? Are they set up for this?
It's difficult. So Eliza Martinuzzi, one of our columnists today, wrote about the difficulty of traders being able to be relocated. A lot of other functions, back office and different roles, very easy to do, but traders talk on recorded lines. They have super fast internet connections. They deal with tons of data, process millions of trades in a day. So it's pretty tricky.
Yeah, not to be too parochial about it, but, you've got all these massive infrastructures, Bloomberg terminals and things like that. There's Bloomberg anywhere, of course. But, you do have this situation where, there is a human element to this business, especially when it comes to trading. Great reporting, as always, Linan Nguyen, finance reporter for Bloomberg. Her story, Wall Street poaching season, up upended as virus stalls interviews. It is not surprisingly, I called it as soon as we saw it this morning. I was like, well, this is going to be one of the most read stories.
Yeah,
today.
Absolutely. And it makes sense. We're going to stay with the virus. Coming up, a couple of stories that are in the magazine this week. And one has to do with really how you can protect your company against the coronavirus. So we'll get into that. And then there's another uplifting story. I won't give it away right now, but we'll talk about it a little bit later on.
Yeah, maybe the even more morbid side of all of this. But it does, the first story that you mentioned about how to prepare, plays exactly to what Lenan was just talking about in terms of the very, kind of specific steps that people are taking. You said at the top of the show, we're like Purelling everything down and Clorox wiping and all of this stuff.
I walked into the makeup room this morning. They're like, okay, have you washed your hands? Are you like, whatever? Tell me. I'm like, yes, and yes.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with it.
You're very well behaved when it comes to that
sometimes.
stuff, for the most part.
Let's just remind everybody, we're down on the day. Dow Jones Industrial Average down almost 3.2%. S&P 500 a loss of just under 3%. And the NASDAQ down almost 3.2%.
So not at the lows of the day, but close.
But just off of it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to World of National News headlines. Back over to Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Carol, millions are voting on this Super Tuesday in primary elections from Maine to California that could profoundly shape the race for the Democratic presidential nomination. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who has energized liberals and young voters, is hoping to pull away from the rest of the field. He spoke outside his polling place in Burlington, Vermont.
Today is obviously a very, very important day. And we look forward to doing well.
At the same time, former Vice President Joe Biden is looking for a boost from a wave of momentum and endorsements from recent dropouts in the race. Even as billionaire Michael Bloomberg is appearing on the ballot for the first time today, he's acknowledging that his only path to the nomination is likely through a convention fight, and he indicated to reporters he may not win any states on this Super Tuesday.
I think we're going to do very well. Looking forward to it.
Are you what are your expectations? Would a third place finish be good?
If there's only 3 candidates, you can't do worse than that.
Well, there is Elizabeth Warren also.
I didn't realize she's still in. Is she?
Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg radio parent Bloomberg LP. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is voicing hope the Senate can pass a funding package for the fight against the coronavirus outbreak this week. A teleconference update today from Dr. Nancy Messonnier of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Right now, we have 12 states that have reported cases of COVID-19. Many of these have occurred within the past 14 days, meaning that we may still find contacts of cases in those states to test positive for COVID-19.
The U.S. death toll stands at 6. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI,
We understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Are you? This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow, jumper, up and good.
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game, North Carolina at Duke.
For the win, no, tapped up by Moore, and in at the buzzer! Moore bakes it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball and TuneIn, hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment,
where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks tumbling, treasuries surging as investors worry the Fed's emergency cut this morning will not be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. S&P 500 index heading for its 8th drop in 9 days, falling right now by 2.9%. S&P at 3,001, down 88 points. The Dow down 802 points, also down 3%, while NASDAQ is down 275 points. That is a drop of 3.1%. The yield on the 10-year, 0.97%. We've got gold up 2.7%, higher by $43 the ounce at $16.32. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.9%, $47.17 a barrel. Recapping, 10-year, 0.97%. S&P down 85, a drop there of 2.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
We are certainly living in interesting times. A couple of stories that talk about those interesting times featured in the magazine this week. One is a warning, or I should say a warning from me, because they're not necessarily uplifting stories. One is about how to protect your company against the coronavirus. Definitely very helpful. The other, what happens to your emails after you die. So happy Tuesday, everyone. Ariane Cohen is a freelance contributor to Business Week, joining us on the phone from New York City and in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio right here in New York is the editor of Business Week magazine, Joel Weber. And we do have to start with the virus. I think this is really useful. We're all talking about what happens to our company. Ariane, let's start with you. Talk to us a little bit about this checklist that you came up with and how you went about it.
Yeah, I wanted to narrow down just the kind of basic things that all executives should have on their minds. And the really key, most important item is that people really need to identify what their critical operations are. So if all hell is breaking loose, what are the things that your company absolutely needs to do? So this means that, maybe the financial department, they need to be paying vendors and paying employees, but, taxes and audit stuff all goes by the wayside. And they also need to identify what's the minimum that customers will accept. So maybe that means that, your customer will only get half of their expected shipment. But having those conversations now and figuring that out is the really key underlying step to being able to come up with a plan.
Ariane, so this is Joel. What I love about this was that there's like the basics, right? Like the easy stuff, as you call it, and it's business continuity, IT recovery, getting a war room set up. Where do you feel like the switch changes a little bit and it becomes, oh wow, I haven't thought about that yet?
I think that people often don't have backups to their backups. In this case, lots of people had a backup factory somewhere else in China that's now out of commission. And what supply chain people kept telling me over and over again is that people really need to have a backup to the backup to the backup, and that these may be really bad options. You may end up paying 5 or 10 times what you used to pay for one part, but if it's a pivotal part to your business, then that's what's happening. And so you may have a list of kind of 6 or 7 options. The other thing that was surprising was that I think what's fallen through the cracks for a lot of companies is they didn't realize that they're not really customer number 1 with their supplier. Maybe they're customer number 34. Or
172.
Yes. Right, and so they're suddenly realizing that their supplier, in order to stay in business, is going to really cater to customers number 1 through 3, and they are not those customers.
One of the things you point out, which I have to say I have not read, is ISO 22301. What's that?
So the International Organization for Standardizations, they are an organization that creates guidelines for companies for kind of all situations. And they wrote a very dense, hard to follow set of guidelines for what to do with business disturbances. It's kind of unreadable. You kind of want to just Google ISO 22301 in plain English, and then you'll find somebody who translated it for you into speakable language. But they run through all of this for pages and pages to tell you exactly how to set up an emergency plan and what a risk management department is, and on and on.
And so when you talk to people, I mean, when you were talking to the crisis planning, supply chain experts for this story, were they, what was the tone that they're taking with this coronavirus crisis right now? Were they thinking like, oh, this is the big one? Or were they saying, all right, we've sort of seen this before? What's their perspective?
They are very gentle. They tend to say that no one was really prepared for this, and that maybe this is a wake-up call, and that this is a good time for people to actually appropriately prepare. Generally speaking, businesses are very well prepared for what they're required to be prepared for. So certain financial companies have SEC regulations requiring them to write a plan for, how would they back up their technology and information.
That's what I think. Everybody, has been all in on, cybersecurity and protections in the high-tech world. And here we are with a virus, and they're caught, really not knowing or not prepared for it.
Exactly. Yeah. People aren't prepared. And a really good piece of advice is to just imagine any number of total disasters happening right now, like a pandemic or, your office, just disappears. What would you do? And then sitting and planning from there.
Okay, so I want to go a little bit morbid. Worst case scenario, say I die. I like that you paired this with what happens to my email when I die? Because I should probably look into a contingency plan.
I warned everybody this was all going to be dark.
I know, it's going to be dark.
Sorry.
So what happens?
I should tell you, I found out about email and death in a journal called Death Studies. That is a scholarly journal all about death.
Wow.
I found an article called Email and Death, and here we are today on the radio talking about it. So yes, email health follows you to your grave. So for your private email, the important thing that you need to know is if you want to make sure that no one has access to it, you should use Gmail, and they have something called Inactive Account Manager, where you can set your account after it's been inactive for 3 to 18 months. You can set it to either delete itself, or you can name up to 10 beneficiaries for individual products, such as your photos or your Gmail or your YouTube, and you can be very specific about that. If you haven't done that, and Google is the only company that offers something like this right now, all of the other major service providers do not. If you haven't done that, you want to be very specific in your will or trust documentation. The thing that people really need to do is specify about photos. That tends to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Say, I want my spouse to have access to my photos in my Apple ID account, and be very specific. And what will happen is after you pass away, someone will have to go to court and get a court order, and then that court order will be given to Apple, and Apple will provide access to that specific thing.
Right. I love, though, the stuff about the work. I mean, if you do something at work, you should assume it belongs to work.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's important for people to remember.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's really a pair of really great stories. Hopefully things people can immediately put into practice. One, as we said, a little bit darker, but useful nonetheless.
It's Super Dark Tuesday, apparently.
It is.
So Death Studies, apparently an academic journal published 10 times a year, and it's all about issues related to death, dying, bereavement, and death education.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. New subscriber. There we go. Ariane Cohen is a writer for Bloomberg Businessweek. She joined us on the phone from New York City. Joel Weber, the editor of the magazine, he was here with us in New York City. All right, the top of the hour, we are going to get an update on the Fed.
We are indeed. But for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco and watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we will continue. We will get that update on the Fed's surprise and emergency move that we got this morning. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. I'm Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly, and we continue to see some pressure on the equity markets.
We do. Stocks off their lows of the session, but still down more than 2%. We're also going to hear about what Target had to say. They had some warnings for their outlook as well. Stick with us. This is Bloomberg.
Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker, brought to you by Dell Small Business. Steve Jensen of Logan, Utah, thought he had a good business selling books through Amazon.com, and then he got hit with a $200,000 tax bill from the state of Washington. They allege he failed to collect and remit sales taxes from customers dating back to 2011. He wasn't even aware that he was supposed to collect the tax in the first place. Jensen isn't alone and likely won't be the last third-party seller chased down by states for sales that were tied to merchandise they housed in Amazon warehouses as early as 2010. At least 5 states have begun efforts to collect potentially billions of dollars in unpaid sales taxes. California and Washington were the first to start sending demand letters for back taxes in late 2016, followed by Massachusetts in 2017. More recently, Minnesota and Wisconsin have confirmed they're also sending demands for back taxes. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
If morning is not your favorite part of the day, then maybe you're not listening.
We finally start to make a move.
Tom Keene.
What would you expect from Bezos next?
Jonathan Farrell.
How uncomfortable should central banks be with this situation?
Morning should be good for you.
We had no idea where this would head on that morning effort.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg. The world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Stay with Bloomberg right through the close, because this final hour of trading is where it often gets quite treacherous. We've got the S&P down now by 79, a drop there of 2.3%. Dow Industrials lower by 708 points, down now by 2.6%. And NASDAQ is slumping 249 points, down 2.8%. As for the 10-year, the yield now 1.01%. We've got gold up 2.5%, $16.28 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.2%, $47.33 a barrel. Big market moves today. Stocks tumbled, treasuries surged as investors worried the Federal Reserve's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. And with more on the Fed's rate decision, the rate move today, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
It's a half-point cut. The Fed said the virus poses evolving risks to the economy. It's monitoring the situation, and it will do all it can to help. The vote by central bankers for the emergency cut was unanimous and followed a conference call among a group of 7 finance ministers. The Fed had been on hold after cutting interest rates 3 times last year. Vinny Dale, Judice, Bloomberg Radio.
Right now we've got the S&P on track for its 8th drop in 9 days. Again, the S&P down 74, now at 3,016, down by 2.4%, have been trading below 3,000. Financials, as you can imagine, moving lower. JP Morgan Chase among them, down 3.3%. Citigroup shares slumping now by 2.9%. Bank of America lower by 4.4%. Speaking of JP Morgan Chase, it is asking thousands of its American employees to work from home as it tests a contingency plan for closing domestic offices should the coronavirus spread. This, according to sources. Again, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all lower. Right now, the S&P is down by 2.3%. Gold heading for its biggest 2-day advance in almost 4 years after the rate cut. Gold up now by 2.6%. The Dow down 2.5%. NASDAQ down 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. This portion brought to you by the Indiana Economic Development Corp. The business world is convening at the Indiana Global Economic Summit, April 26th to 28th. Visit estatethatworks.com to join the conversation about the future of the global economy. Well, bringing you a headline that's just crossing a read spike on the Bloomberg, meaning people are flocking to this story. Ford banning all business trips after 2 employees contract the coronavirus. 2 employees in China, I should point out, contracted that coronavirus. They were quarantined after being diagnosed with the virus, officially named COVID-19, of course.
And I just want to add on that, the Washington state officials now reporting 9 total deaths as a result of the coronavirus. So we've seen that number tick higher out of the state of Washington.
And so all of that is clearly on the mind of the Federal Reserve Bank. And they made a move earlier. Let's talk about it with our team here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Yelena Shalecheva is here, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Katie Greifeld, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. Yelena, want to start with you. What was the vibe on the Bloomberg Economics team when Mr. Powell and team put that message out, and then when Chair Powell spoke?
So the Fed did it because they wanted to stop tightening in financial conditions. And
how tight were they?
They were like as tight as probably back in 2015-16 when, there was China currency devaluation and all of that.
Okay.
And it was not as tight as during the financial crisis, but the Fed decided to preemptively cut rates. Mm-hmm. So before they received any hard evidence of the virus impact. So we're going to get some data on that in the coming weeks. Actually, tomorrow we're going to get Beige Book. We'll hear some anecdotes from business contacts. But the Fed had already spoken to their business contacts.
I was just going to say, the Fed already has seen some of this or was aware of it.
So it was just not public, but they are currently, they're talking constantly to their business contacts, and from what they heard, they thought that it would be a great move just to make sure and act preemptively.
Yeah, I got to say, when we were on the call, I missed the headline. I was on the call, and you said it, and I didn't catch it till later on.
And then 7 minutes later, you're like, oh my God.
Well, I saw it on the TV screen. I'm like, are you kidding me? Only because I remember coming in, even pre-crisis, where the Fed would do an emergency cut because of either something, I think about the Asian contagion when we had problems there, and, long-term capital management, like different times where the Fed would jump in, and you were like, whoa, this is really serious.
Every day we were getting something.
Exactly. So, Katie, come on in on this. I mean, you guys, cross-asset reporter here at Bloomberg News, I mean, when that headline crossed, tell me some of what you're hearing from market watchers and economic watchers.
Well, it was a wild day in markets because initially stocks yields, they spiked after that cut, mm-hmm. but then Powell held that press conference, and that's when things really started to turn south. I think he was maybe a little too honest. He acknowledged that the risks to the U.S. economy have changed, but he also said that the Fed's tools to address it are inadequate, which we all knew. The Fed can't stop a health crisis, but that's not what investors wanted to hear today. There was a lot of hope that maybe we're going to see some global coordinated central bank action, but we didn't get that. We got this emergency cut just from the Fed acting alone. So that really clearly was a disappointment.
And so as you talk to investors and others, colleagues and whatnot, what was the thing that sort of jumped out at you in terms of themes? Just sort of too little too late, not enough, wrong message, or maybe the worst is yet to come?
Really all over the spectrum. You hear people arguing that it's too early. We haven't seen this trickle into U.S. data yet. We had weak ISM figures yesterday, but we really haven't seen anything that would justify a 50 basis point cut. Then you hear it on the other end that, they're being way too cautious. They should have gone 100 basis points, or at least that, they should have opened the door to perhaps they'd look to utilize other tools as well.
Well, the goal of central bankers too is to be preemptive, right? They don't want to see the economy turn into a downturn or a recession. They want to get ahead of it. Have they got, was there stuff out there, Yelena, that you and the Bloomberg economics team were seeing? We have these conversations, every day with you folks, that was starting to get a little bit worrisome.
Well, I think they learned the lesson from 2018, from the end of 2018, when actually things in the markets were deteriorating and they delivered a rate hike, remember, in the fourth quarter of 2018. So they, I think, learned from their lesson from the past, and they delivered what they were supposed to.
So it was a good thing for them to do? Because I know Gina Martin Adams was talking earlier about that maybe they should have done something with the balance sheet.
Well, I think they used the primary tool. This is the first line of defense, and they went with it. So Powell actually at the press conference said that not at this point. They only considered the interest rate lever. So I think when and if they get to the bottom, and we know that they will eventually get there, so there will be other tools at their disposal.
I'm just looking at rates, man. It just blows my mind. Katie, what else are you hearing in terms of we've got a lot more to go this week, and of course we get that monthly jobs report come Friday.
Right.
I am curious what folks are saying.
Absolutely. I can tell you that I felt a bit breathless when I saw that zero handle on the 10-year yield, and I think that was the feeling in markets as well. And
we're 1.007 right now,
right,
on that 10-year.
Yeah, flirting with that 1% level. So it's going to be interesting to see, is this a line in the sand for the market? Do we bounce back in Asian trading? Do people come in and say we've gone too far too fast? Or is it really flying blind here? Is there more to fall? Carol, like you said, it's only Tuesday. There's a lot more to go in this week.
Right.
And let's not forget, we have a Fed meeting in 2 weeks. What happens there?
That's a great question. So what happens there, Yelena?
I think they delivered insurance for now, and if things stabilize more or less from now on, they will probably skip that meeting.
Could they cut again?
They can absolutely cut again. Our current forecast is they cut rates further in April and June.
Wow. In April, June, so not this month, the next month, and then in June. All right.
They don't have much room anymore.
Well, they will use this the interest rate lever first, and then they have other tools at their disposal.
Exactly. All right. We will be keeping an eye on
Hence
all
the
of that.
breathlessness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's nuts.
All right. Great stuff. Thank you so much to both of you. Yelena Shalecheva, Senior U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Katie Greifeld, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. A very busy day for both of you. We know coming up... What are we doing?
What are we going to do? We're taking a look at Target, because that stock has been bouncing around. It did rally, then it sold off. We're going to get an update from our U.S. retail reporter, Matt Boyle. We love talking to him.
We do. First, Bob Moon's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Okay, so that surprise Fed rate cut intended to reassure markets in the face of the spreading coronavirus hasn't stopped today's sell-off as investors worry it may not be enough to overcome the financial impacts of the global crisis. That's one view. At George Mason University's Mercatus Center, David Beckworth points out it all depends on your perspective. The move indeed may be propping up the markets, even if they're still down.
The way to think about it is, where would they be if they hadn't done it? It might be even worse.
Central bankers aren't the only ones in Washington scrambling to respond to the outbreak. 3 top health officials testified before the Senate Health Committee on efforts to limit its spread. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
The head of the Food and Drug Administration, Stephen Hahn, responded to a skeptical Senator Patty Murray of hard-hit Washington State.
Do you really believe that 1 million tests will be available by the end of this week?
The companies that we're working with on this, they have the capacity to develop enough test kits. Every day we're hearing from additional manufacturers that they can do this to perform up to 1 million tests.
Senator Murray cited testimony that for a person with symptoms to be able to get an immediate test for coronavirus, that's still months away. At the White House, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's confident lawmakers in the House and Senate will reach a bipartisan agreement this week on additional coronavirus funding. They're acting as the number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. overall has now climbed past 100, scattered across at least 14 states, with nearly 20 of those in the state of Washington, which now reports 9 deaths. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking?
Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass. A full leather ebony interior. Then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar are dynamic black. Understated has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar. Land Rover. Above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over? The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Bristol. Let's visit Clifton Suspension Bridge, said Dick. SS Great Britain, added Julian. The harbour, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Bristol's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Bristol in as little as 68 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Bristol Parkway. Terms and conditions apply.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
Trials of their vaccine will start in April. Business Insider reported that Google has halted international travel and Lyft reaffirmed their Q1 guidance. Wrapping things up, Nordstrom reports after the bell. Live from the First Red Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill Maloney. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk, SQUAWK on the Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Appreciate that update. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
All right, well, Carol said it before we came back for this segment. If Matt Boyle wrote it, we're in for it. We want to catch up with him whenever we can. And he's here to talk about Target, as it's known. People not so happy today, or candidly, Target kind of being a little more cautious and adding to this narrative that we continue to hear. Tell us what we heard from Target today.
So, we already knew their holiday sales, and we knew they stunk. I mean, there was no way around it. The company itself admitted they were disappointing. Toys were bad, electronics were bad. So we knew that going in. So all the focus today was going to be, okay, what's your outlook for the year? And then also, what are you going to say about the coronavirus? Last week, their fellow retailer in Minneapolis, Best Buy, said that it's a very fluid situation, it's very complicated, but it was definitely going to impact their full year on the supply chain. They didn't go so far as to say whether it's going to impact consumer demand and consumer spending yet, which, as we know, props up the economy. Since then, of course, over the weekend, everyone was hoarding water bottles and disinfectant and everything else. You probably saw all the pictures from Costco.
Yeah.
So today Target comes in and they say nothing for the first hour of their scheduled investor day, which they had to move from New York, by the way, back to Minneapolis because of the coronavirus. So we're all kind of waiting. We're all waiting on bated breath, like, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? And they said no. And then they finally, towards the very end of their presentation, they say, well, not much impact at all, really. We're fine.
Wow.
All's well, which is kind of odd in the light of Best Buy's comments and even Walmart, who reported 2 weeks ago.
That's really choreographed, don't you feel like?
Well, I mean, they clearly had a whole choreographed presentation today, and then the virus comes in. They say, well, we have to address it in some way. Now, they did say, they said the basics. They said, we're talking to our vendors in China every day. We've got a team in place. We're going over every purchase order. They said the right things, but in terms of the impact to their full year business, their operations, they said no big impact, basically no biggie. Let's move on.
And so what did analysts and investors that you talked to say about that?
Well, a few of us were saying, okay, well, what's the story here? Now, analysts, they need to plug numbers into their models, as we know.
Yeah.
And their full year guidance on the earnings side was a little light, certainly. And that sent the shares down at first, and they were back up, and now they're down just because the whole market is down. But
down
analysts
about 2.7%.
Analysts like their strategy, though. The small format stores are working, and they're going to lean into that with 3 dozen this year. They're even going to open smaller small format stores, so half the size of their current ones that you see on like the Upper East Side and Tribeca, like kind of the size of a convenience store, really. So they're having a lot of success with that. They're going to double down on e-commerce as well, actually doing milk and egg pickup, moving into fresh, something that Walmart already does very well, and Target's probably missing a trick on. They know that people don't really know Target for food. It's not it's not a destination for food in the same way it is for apparel and beauty, all those categories that do really well for Target. So they need to make it more of a destination for food. So yesterday I wrote about how they're now doing a partnership with Boar's Head, the famous Brooklyn butcher whose cold cuts we all grew up on. But apparently it's more of a delicacy in Minneapolis, apparently. So for them it's a high-end brand. And so, but again, that just adds to the sort of the brands that people know that'll probably hopefully draw them in.
They're not wrong, because I don't go there for groceries, and even if I'm shopping there, sometimes I'll wander in and I'm like, oh well, they don't have this, and I just I leave.
You might grab a couple,
and then I have to hurry because I got to get it home into the fridge.
Yeah.
So it's
so
weird.
Exactly. So grocery is a big opportunity for them, certainly. But their private brands are just knocking it out of the park. Cat and Jack.
They are.
Cat and Jack is the kids' clothing brand is a multi-billion
Cat and Jack
brand.
is huge,
and they're taking brands and turning them.
Cat and Jack.
Goodfellow, which is a men's clothing brand. I own a few pieces myself. They're extending it into beard waxes and stuff. So they're good brand managers.
I'm sorry, did you say beard waxes?
Beard waxes and male grooming, toiletries, all those things you love, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
What is their best category at Target?
Their signature categories are definitely apparel for kids and also women. I mean, they're getting slowly into men's, but beauty is big right now.
And they've expanded.
They had a slide today where they talked about the market share they've gained in beauty in the past 3 years, and it's multi-billions, meaning they've stolen shares from other retailers in the beauty category. And if you walk into one of the remodeled Targets, the beauty section really pops.
And I will say that often you can tell that they're selling, because I feel like the shelves, stuff moves really quickly.
Well, and they've also done some pretty good partnerships with some direct-to-consumer brands. I'm thinking about Harry's and others.
Yeah, Harry's, Quip is another. They also made an investment in Casper, which has not worked out so well. They had to take a $41 million pre-tax loss on it today because, Casper Sleep is, you could say what you will about the online mattress category. Right. But they are certainly doing interesting things with these D2C brands. Then also big brands like Disney and Levi's as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, certainly one that's on our radar. And as you mentioned, I looked at the stock too, because it rallied at one point. Then it was sold off about 4.7%. It's still down about 3.6%. Yeah. So investors not impressed. And the market's down, though.
They have a high bar to clear. Last year was a banner year for Target, so it's hard to repeat that.
All right. What a treat for us to catch up with you.
Beard wax.
Matt Boyle.
They were up 94% last year.
Yeah. I like that you just said beard wax.
Because I find it odd.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're not in Brooklyn.
Honey, go to the store and I'm getting some beard wax. I got to pick up some... when a woman says that...
I'm headed to Target. Anybody need anything? Beard wax.
Dad, can you get me some beard wax?
This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are off their lows in the final hour, but the market remains deep in the red on coronavirus fears. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 637, the S&P 500 down 66, the Nasdaq Composite down 218. The coronavirus outbreak is keeping shoppers away from the mall. Store visits fell 3.3% in the U.S. last week, according to Prodco Analytics. It was the fourth consecutive weekly decline. The impact of the coronavirus is also being felt at U.S. ports. The American Association of Port Authorities sees a first-quarter decline of up to 20% in cargo volumes. Fewer sailings to and from Asia is a main reason. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau may soon get its wings clipped by the Supreme Court. The court heard arguments today in a case concerning limits placed on the president's ability to fire the Bureau's director. The justices seemed inclined to broaden that authority. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investment.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Matt Letizia, what did you make of that performance today?
Well, it really was a game of two halves, to be honest, Jeff. Leicester came out in the first half really...
Letiz?
What's up, Jeff?
Run for it!
What the...
Move over, football. Cheltenham coming through. And Sky Bet are on the charge. With money back as actual cash, up to £10 if you lose on the first race of the festival. Sky Bet. That's betting better. Applies to first bet on first race at Cheltenham on losing singles and win part of each way singles only. Money back as cash, free bet stakes excluded, eligibility restrictions, T's and C's apply. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres, ends 18th of March.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, the biographer of Michael Bloomberg gives us a peek at the man behind the billions.
I have often thought that one of the reasons he was so stiff
as a speaker was that he was trying to resist saying some really smart-ass remarks. And
Eleanor Randolph on Michael Bloomberg. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and go.
This week, we have a must-hear game. North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win! No! Tapped up by more! And it is the buzzer! More banks get in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
As traders bet that the Federal Reserve's emergency rate cut might not be enough to prevent the coronavirus from chilling the American economy. The 10-year now at 1.01%. The Dow down 643 points. That is a drop of 2.4%. Have been down as many as 997 points, but just after the rate decision was announced, we did see the Dow surge by 381 points, but again, it is down now by 2.6%, down 700 points. S&P's down 71. That is a drop of 2.3%. And NASDAQ is down 222 points now, a decline of 2.5%. Stocks dropped, Treasury surged as investors worried the Fed's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. Marilyn Watson is head of global fixed income strategy at BlackRock Financial.
When you look at the statement from Friday of last week, and also you saw the statement this morning from the G7, it was very clear that the Fed and other central banks are willing and able to do as much as possible. So we were actually expecting some form of cut, either at the meeting in 2 weeks' time or earlier, and as it happens, it obviously came earlier.
Gold is up 2.9%, $16.35 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, $47.38 a barrel. After earnings, Target shares tumbling 3.5%. Kohl stores lower by 2.8%. After the bell, we will be hearing from Urban Outfitters, among other companies. Ford banning all air travel for business after 2 of its employees in China contracted the coronavirus. Also, Google is instructing employees now not to travel internationally over concerns about the coronavirus. This according to Business Insider. Again, recapping, it is a down day, 27 minutes to go ahead of the close. S&P down 73, lower by 2.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. Charlie, why are you laughing?
Why are you laughing?
It was a brilliant choice. The songs, the artist sounds unbelievably vaguely familiar, but did you hear the lyrics?
Never enough.
Never enough, right? And that's got to be what Dave's talking about with the Federal Reserve today. Never enough.
Oh, is that it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But who's the artist?
All right. I'll give you a hint about the singer. Mrs. John McEnroe.
Tatum O'Neal?
No. Yes, I know who it is. No, he's after her, after Tatum O'Neal. It's not. I can't think of who she is. Oh,
I'm nowhere.
Scandal featuring Patty Smythe.
Patty
Smythe. There you go.
Well done.
You know, and
that was hard.
I know.
Everything's hard today.
As much as anything, that's why I picked the song, because I knew it would be a challenge.
It was.
And it's been a challenge trying to get through the market the last couple of weeks. But there was one indicator that I ran across in a report, basically a blog post by the folks at Sentiment Trader, that got my attention, and it's just because it was a technical indicator that, shall we say, was rather out of line with where it's been over time. It's something called the 14-day relative strength index as it applies to the S&P 500. I think we've had the discussion before. The index can be anywhere from 0 to 100. The lower it is, the weaker the indicator is. But what they did is pull together all the stocks in the S&P 500 and look at the percentage of them that were below the 14-day RSI reading of 30, which suggests that, things are poised to rise. Well, at the end of last week, you got a reading of almost 69%, and that's pretty rare.
Right.
I mean, that's what the chart shows. You go back 10 years, you run across 3 other occasions where that happened. August 2011, when stocks were falling out of bed. August 2015, similar story. And, of course, December 2018, when we had that fourth quarter swoon in stocks. And in each of those cases, you saw the market rebound 1, 3, 6 months out. Now, Sentiment Trader itself goes back to 1990, finds a few more examples, and is able to show that it's not a unanimous sort of thing, but there is sort of a predisposition for stocks to rise. And the basic argument is that things just get so out of line, that you figure that there would be a reversal at some point. Now, given the way that stocks perform today, you could argue, I suppose, that there's even more of a case to be made on that score. But, we don't have a reading today that's anything like what we saw at the end of last week. So we kind of have to go with this, to get a sense of where things might be headed from here. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
It's if you buy into, technical indicators and you follow those kinds of things. And if you look at charts, they tend to be accurate if it's overbought, oversold, right? But it doesn't mean that we couldn't go lower from here, because you do see that.
Absolutely. I mean, this doesn't tell you so much about timing on kind of a day-to-day basis, but it gives you a sense, if nothing else, how far out of line stocks got. And just in terms of today, you've got not quite a quarter of the stocks in the index with readings on this RSI gauge below 30. So, what we've been through in the last couple of weeks is kind of changed the equation as far as this indicator goes. But it is a rather compelling chart, if nothing else.
And I really do feel like since the crisis that we have become this market where things run up kind of steadily, and then all of a sudden something happens and then we sell off and we get a correction, a kind of either close to a 10 or we get that 10% correction. And then provided that the outlook is okay, we start to resume our climb again.
Yeah, I mean, the real question is how okay the outlook is this time around as opposed to 2011 or 2015 or 2018. I mean, there are a lot of people figuring that the bull market in stocks would end at each of those points, and it didn't. So the question now is whether 2020 is going to prove to be any different.
Right. Do we hit a bear market? Do we hit a 20% correction?
Some big existential questions hanging out there, and we trust you to answer all of them for us. Dave Wilson, you'll be back with us right after the close of trading with your stock of the day.
Who said Tatum O'Neal?
I did.
All right, nice.
Whoa. Came in hot there. Did you get it right? You said no, the other one.
I knew who it was. I just couldn't think of her name, which is something I always do.
So not just knowing that it was an individual doesn't count as a win. Just saying.
Wow.
Just saying.
Harsh.
Bob Moon. He's got your World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Thank you. Too little, too late. The assessment from President Trump after urging the Federal Reserve for months to lower interest rates despite the booming economy. Now Trump is warily watching the stock market volatility and saying the Fed needs to do more to calm investors.
The Fed is very disappointing to me. They have to lead, not follow. They are following, not leading.
Trump spoke to reporters as he headed to the National Institutes of Health today to consult with public health officials on the status of the spread of the new coronavirus in the U.S. As health officials in the state of Washington report the death toll there is now up to 9, Trump continues insisting that he doesn't see a rapid spread of the disease as inevitable, and he praises his administration's response.
Things are going very well, as you see. It's been very strong. Mike Pence and the entire group are doing an excellent job.
Tensions are, in fact, rising over how to contain the fast-spreading virus as lawmakers rush to pass as much as $7.5 billion in emergency funding. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says a briefing from the Trump administration is raising concerns over testing.
We need an on-site test, not a test that has to be sent far away and sent back. And we need to know where people can get it, how people can get it, and we need to make sure it's not so costly that people don't get it. And there were no answers to those vital questions. We hope we will have answers from them soon.
The number of known cases in the U.S. overall has climbed past 100, scattered across 14 states. With Super Tuesday primary voting underway in 14 states, Mike Bloomberg is acknowledging today it would take a convention fight for him to win the nomination. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, the biographer of Michael Bloomberg gives us a peek at the man behind the billions.
I've often thought that one of the reasons he was so stiff as a speaker was that he was trying to resist saying some really smart-ass remarks. And
Eleanor Randolph on Michael Bloomberg. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow, jumper, up and good!
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game. North Carolina at Duke.
Two for the win! No! Tapped up by Moore! And in at the buzzer! Moore makes it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball and TuneIn, hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
That's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell here with the 10-year at 1.01%. Stay with us right through the close to see how equities shake out. S&P down 68 now, a drop there of 2.2%. Of course, join us tonight for Daybreak Asia. Find out, I should say First Word Asia, find out how our Asian markets react tonight. We've got the Dow down 613 points now, down 2.3%. And NASDAQ down 214, a drop there of 2.4%. Again, the 10-year 1.01%. Gold up 3.1%. 16.39 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.4%. 47.44 a barrel. Stocks fell. Treasuries surged as investors worried the Fed's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the drive to the close. Jim Russell is back with us, Principal and Portfolio Manager at Ball & Gaynor. They've got over $38 billion in assets under management. Jim with us on the phone from Cincinnati. Jim, wild day, didn't necessarily start maybe how we expected with that emergency move and surprise move by the Federal Reserve. Although the market's safe to say yesterday we're anticipating it. How do you read kind of where we are and to see the market, ending the day in the red?
Yeah, Carol, thanks for having me on again. I guess our read would be this. We view the current situation as really two important crises that are taking place at the same time. Number one is a public health crisis. I think everybody's aware of the spread of the coronavirus globally and maybe increasingly in the United States. That is a separate issue from maybe what we're talking about today. The second, of course, is the economic impact of this supply shock. This is increasingly moving beyond travel, hotels, restaurants, and other things, and perhaps resulting in transportation limitations, meeting cancellations, slowdowns across the board. So the market, of course, fears a recession on a global basis and here in the United States, and that's what the S&P 500 and, importantly, the fixed income markets are responding to as well.
Well, and we should note that we are seeing stocks here in the U.S. taking a leg down here in the last few minutes of trading today on a Tuesday. They had been hovering around down 2% or so for the last hour at least. And now as we get to the close, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ all hovering around 3%. So we've obviously got about 9 minutes or so until the close of trading. So we'll see where we end up.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, so how do you put this in perspective with some of the other, pullbacks that we've seen and 10% corrections that we've seen in the equity universe, certainly since the financial crisis?
Right. We would categorize it as slightly different and somewhat unique. Some of the other pullbacks that we have seen, Carol, have been led by the credit markets, meaning a blowout in high yield spreads to the U.S. Treasury. High yield bonds are trading a little bit higher and spreading out a little bit from U.S. Treasury securities, but they're following equities down as opposed to leading equities down. So right now we think this is an emotional anticipatory move by the equity markets that are anticipating, candidly, the slowdown in U.S. businesses, earnings cuts, GDP cuts, global slowdown, and, of course, the supply disruptions in China. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's our understanding that China seems to be getting some degree of their hands around this issue in China and perhaps even getting back to work to some degree. That, of course, does not mean that South Korea, Europe, the Middle East, and certainly the United States are out of the woods. I think it continues to be a growing problem in some of these other non-Chinese geographies and will continue to be worse rather than better in the days ahead. So I do think that the nature of the issue is open-ended and uncertainty is, of course, what investors are focused on. This is the classic black swan event that folks did not anticipate, could not have anticipated, and has no easy or convenient closure to it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to think about sort of China as the marker here, Jim, in the sense that it is a very tightly run country, to say the least, and a tightly run, state-sponsored economy in many ways, and a country that was able to enact some, I think it's fair to say, draconian measures in order to contain this. So I think it feels like that's one of the things that is continuing to worry investors here, right?
Right. We would agree. I mean, it's our understanding that 55 million people were locked down with travel curtailed, including the city of Wuhan, which is a city of 11 million people. And so these are really lockdowns and quarantines of scale and really not available or unimplementable, I think, in areas like Europe, the Middle East, and the United States.
All right. Jim Russell, thank you so much. Principal and Portfolio Manager at Ball & Gaynor on the phone from Cincinnati. So,
all right.
As you mentioned, I just want to say, we're taking another leg down. We're still off our lows of the session, but we've pretty much, erased a lot of the bounce back that we got on Monday.
All right. One headline, just as we look at the implications of how this is playing out, especially right here in our backyard, Columbia University suspending all school-related student travel as the coronavirus spreads, encouraging others affiliated with the Ivy League school to cancel non-essential international travel. We also heard from the dean of the school. He's been on this program. He basically said they were at least exploring the notion of instruction remotely, sort of moving to that and not convening classes. So a lot of contingency planning going on. We heard about JP Morgan earlier doing a pretty meaningful test run in terms of folks working from home, about 10% of its consumer bank being asked to work from home and some measures being taken there in the branches.
And I think this is what's going on in the market environment. I think safe to say that, the Fed was very aggressive, that emergency move, 0.5 point cut in rates, doing that to, looking at the market worries and looking at, the concerns on the economy. But a rate cut in itself does not stem the flow of virus cases or stop any more breakouts. And I think until we have a better handling as a nation what the exposure is here specifically in the United States. And I think we don't know. I've heard a lot of stories, anecdotal stories of folks trying to access hospitals, trying to access test kits and not being able to. So until we have an idea of how much of the population potentially tests positive for the virus, we've already up to 9 deaths in Washington. Until we have a better understanding of what our exposure is here in the U.S., I think it's going to be hard for investors to calm down.
Right. Well, it's a really good point because this is not a financial crisis, right? I mean, the last time we saw these sorts of actions, it was a financial crisis, which really was about financial stability. This is not a question of financial stability.
But financial market conditions did tighten, which explains why the Fed did what it did.
I totally understand that part. But the fact of the matter is that your underlying point is that the Fed can't really solve the problem of the virus, whereas the Fed could do a lot to help stabilize the financial system, which is what it was trying to do back in the financial crisis. A couple names we're going to be looking at after the close of trading, Nordstrom and HPE, both coming out with earnings. Both are going to give us a pretty interesting read, it feels like, on tech demand, but also consumer demand as well here in the United States.
At one point at the highs of the day, Nordstrom was up about 4%. Ending the day, it looks like down about 2.9% lower. And just a quick look at HPE ahead of their earnings. We'll get those after the closing bell, as Jason just mentioned. That too was up 3.4% at its highs, but it's going to finish the day, at least in the regular trade, down about 2%. But we'll break those earnings down and what you need to know about the quarter. That's coming up right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
Let's talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. This is Bloomberg Pursuit's look at luxury. The markets may be in flux, but at least one alternative asset seems to be holding strong. Blue chip artwork. A Mark Rothko painting from the estate of late financier Donald Marin sold for about $70 million. According to people familiar with the private transaction, 3 New York galleries, Pace, Gagosian, and Aquavella, recently announced they joined forces to sell the former Museum of Modern Art trustees' trove. About $300 million worth has been placed so far, led by a pair of Picasso portraits sold to casino mogul Steve Wynn. Sports investors also doing well. Owners of the Los Angeles Football Club have partially bought out a stake held by Malaysian businessman Vincent Tan, in a deal that values the club at more than $700 million, the most ever for a Major League Soccer team. The LAFC deal continues a rapid uptick in team valuations for MLS, which starts its 25th season this weekend. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to...
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. He's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Wild day on Wall Street. Surprise rate cut from the Federal Reserve, but in the end, a move lower for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Folks from Keysight Technologies ringing that closing bell. Stocks dropped, Treasuries surged as investors worried the Fed's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. S&P down 87 at the close. That was a drop of 2.8%. Dow Industrials down 791 points. That was a drop of 3%. At the worst level of the day, we had the Dow down by 997 points, almost 1,000. At the best level of the day, right after that rate cut was announced, we had the Dow surging by 381 points. NASDAQ down 268 points, a drop there of 3%. So the S&P 500 index having its 8th drop in 9 days following the Federal Reserve's 50 basis point cut of its benchmark rate. Jim Russell is with Ball and Gaynor. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Right now, we think this is an emotional, anticipatory move by the equity markets that are anticipating, candidly, the slowdown in U.S. businesses, earnings cuts, GDP cuts, global slowdown, and, of course, the supply disruptions in China.
And another tough day for a lot of travel-related stocks. UAL, parent of United Airlines, tumbling today by 4.9%. American Airlines Group dropped 5.4%. Delta Airlines lower today by 2.1%. Also rough sailing for a lot of the cruise stocks today. Carnival Corporation down another 3.7%. So far this year, by the way, Carnival Corp down 37.4%. We've got shares of Royal Caribbean Cruises lower by 2.9%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings down today by 5.5%. So again, recapping, a move lower for equities. Gold up 2.9%. West Texas Intermediate Crude up by 1.2%. S&P down 87, down 2.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates emotion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Company's called Movers and Shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly in our Interactive Brokers studio. We do have some earnings crossing. Quick check on the S&P 500, big picture. 44 names in the index, higher by the end of the close, 461 lower. Real estate was your best performing group. Real estate index was up, still down about 0.1%, but that was your top performing major industry group in the S&P 500. Jason, at the bottom of the pack, financials, no surprise with rates going down, and the S&P 500 information technology index.
All right, some earnings crossing. Ross Stores looking like they're coming in. I'm looking at the forecast here. I'm trying to figure out why the stock is down.
Yeah, and they boosted their dividend,
Boosting dividend, comp sales better than expected in the fourth quarter, as you say, raising dividend, but the stock is
I'm wondering if that
down.
comp sales number is disappointing. We don't have a comparison yet, but they're looking for first quarter comp sales, right, of 1% to 2%, so just looking for some comparison. But you're right, fourth quarter was a beat, boosted their dividend, earnings per share for the fiscal year, 467 to 48. That's light. So maybe that's some of what's going on here.
You're right. First quarter EPS, even the range is below consensus. So that is certainly what's driving the shares down. Not down a huge amount, down about 1.2%, as you say.
All right, so let's take a look. One of the big decliners. Actually,
also, sorry to point out, Ross Stores saying its guidance doesn't reflect potential virus effects. So that's another thing. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And they're saying fiscal year 21 EPS coming in at $4.67 to $4.88, $4.67 to $4.88. The consensus there was for $5.01. So the not a great forecast.
I think we're going to hear that from a lot of companies.
High level of
uncertainty to figure it out. Not so uncertain. The home builders, they saw a huge cut by the Federal Reserve, and that means potentially it's going to work its way through the system, and that means lower mortgage rates. So Lennar, your number 4 gainer in the S&P 500, ticker LEN. Stock was up as much as 5.7%, still up at the close of trading today, but paring back that big rally, still up about 2.6% as the stock settles in on this Tuesday, and again closing at 64.24. We do have HPE crossing.
Yeah, you look at HPE terminal. While I do Nordstrom. Go.
All right, HPE Enterprise. Let's see, first quarter net revenue $6.95 billion. That's a miss, folks. $7.21 billion was what Wall Street was forecasting. First quarter adjusted EPS 44 cents. That's smack on in terms of what folks were predicting, and it still sees, looking at the outlook, fiscal year adjusted EPS $1.78 to $1.94. That's a pretty wide range. The estimate out there is for $1.84. What are we seeing with the stock?
Stock's down just a touch, about 1.1% here in the immediate aftermath. We'll obviously be watching that one pretty closely, HPE, and we're going to catch up with Anand Srinivasan in just a little bit to get his take. He's coming up at about a quarter past the hour. Now the stock moving down a little more significantly, down about 4.7%. Meanwhile, Nordstrom saying that meeting estimates on the revenue side. At least fourth quarter revenue coming in at $4.54 billion, about 1.2% up year over year. The estimate there was for 4.53, so that's a very slight beat. Gross margin 35% versus 35.1% year over year. That is a little bit of a miss, little light. The estimate had been for 35.4, and then I don't have a comparison.
Stock's
I don't have an EPS comparison.
Stock's down 2% here in the after hours.
So we'll keep track of that one as well, and let you know what people are thinking about. I mean, Nordstrom has struggled a little bit, as many retailers have.
Opened a big retail store, a flagship store here in New York.
Right here in New York City.
Let's talk about the volatility index report. The VIX, which rallied big time on last Thursday, up 42%, was down another 16%, though, on Monday as stocks rallied, but it gained another 9% today. The VIX closing at 36.51. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Dave Wilson back with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio with your stock of the day. What you got?
I've got Axos Financial, Jason. It's an online banking specialist. The holding company went public as B of I Holding in 2005, 6 years after its main unit was founded as Bank of Internet USA. The names changed in September 2018, which resulted in Axos Financial and Axos Bank. Now, Axos Financial's ticker is AX. The company's shares peaked at a record in June 2018. Lower interest rates and disappointing earnings reports then sent them down as much as 48%. Axos fell today to its lowest price since June 2017 because of a business issue. Now, the company disclosed in a filing that it's required to cut fees on a prepaid debit card called the Emerald Card under federal regulations. The card is offered through H&R Block, which sold its banking unit to Axos in 2015. Axos said the companies have yet to agree on compensation for the lower fees, and because of this, Block can terminate the card deal at any time. It's supposed to run through 2022. Now, this development sent Axos shares to a loss of 9%, and that was the biggest for the stock since October 2016.
All right. Nice one, David Wilson. Thank you so much. We will catch up with you tomorrow for your market insights, your chart, and your stock. Just a little more on Nordstrom. That stock is now down more than 10%, was down as much as 11%. They're seeing fiscal year 2020 EPS in a range of $3.25 to $3.50. The consensus there is for $3.42. Also saying that the outlook doesn't include any potential virus impact. That's got to be a bugaboo for investors, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And get ready, everybody, because we're going to hear this more and more from companies because, you know what? They just don't know what the impact is at this point.
Let's get over to Bob Moon now. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. Congress is scrambling to pass additional money as soon as this week to combat coronavirus, 3 times as much as President Trump first requested. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from the White House.
The president welcomed the extra spending as he spoke to a conference of county-level officials.
6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, you never heard of this. All of a sudden, it's got the world aflutter, but it'll work out. I asked for $2.5 billion. It looks like they're going to give us $8.5 billion. So I think I should say I'll take it, right?
The president also announced he will visit the tornado-hit area of Tennessee, promising to help them recover and rebuild. At the White House, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Authorities in New York are trying to trace the possible source of another reported case of the coronavirus and who else might have been exposed. A 50-year-old man in Westchester tested positive for COVID-19, and it appears he contracted it through community spread. At a press conference in Albany, Governor Andrew Cuomo said this kind of spread was expected.
So we are now going through possible connections to track down possible connections to find people.
The man works in Manhattan and had not been to China or any of the countries on the watch list. 2 schools attended by his children have closed as a precaution. Billionaire Democratic presidential hopeful Mike Bloomberg says he doesn't know if he'll win any of the 14 states voting on this Super Tuesday. The first time he's appearing on any ballot. The founder and majority owner of Bloomberg radio parent Bloomberg LP acknowledged that the only way he can secure the nomination is through a contested convention. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon. Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I did not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Get priority tickets to AVA London with Orbital, Joy Orbison, Ross from Friends, Peach and more. If you're on O2, you'll have access to VIP, all with priority. AVA London, at Printworks on the 14th of March. Unforgettable live music experiences with O2. O2, breathe it all in. Terms apply.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and good.
This week, we have a must-hear game, North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win. No, tapped up by Moore. And it is the buzzer. Moore makes it in.
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
Movies like Contagion and Outbreak, not to mention all the cell phone images from disease-stricken countries, have made Americans pandemic voyeurs.
Now, for the first time, we're facing the probability that we will not just be witnessing, we'll be experiencing. And then we'll find out, what is the mettle of Americans?
Catch this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Lots of earnings after the bell, among them HP Enterprise cutting its free cash flow forecast for the full year. Shares down by roughly 0.5%. We've got more with our Anand Srinivasan coming up in just a moment. Nordstrom forecasting adjusted EPS for the full year and the guidance midpoint, missing the average analyst estimate. Nordstrom shares, they are tumbling now by just about 9.1%. A move lower for the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ, the 10-year 1.00%. Stocks fell, Treasury surged as investors worried the Fed's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. S&P down 86, down 2.8%. The Dow down 785 points, down 2.9%. NASDAQ fell 268, lower by 3%. Gold up 3.1%, $16.38 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up today by 1.3%, $47.36 a barrel. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 86, a drop there of 2.8%, 10-year yield 1.00%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
So I want to talk a little bit about HPE because they just crossed with their earnings. Jason, of course, and myself breaking down their results, and we've seen the stock bouncing around a little bit.
Essentially flat now.
Yeah, so it's definitely come off its lows in the after hours. Anand Srinivasan has also been tracking the news and also what the stock's doing. He's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Semiconductor and Hardware Analyst, and he's in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio.
And you know he works for Bloomberg Intelligence by his hoodie.
Yeah.
Just saying. He's rocking it here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker
studio. Is that a BI hoodie?
Yeah, BI Go on the sleeve.
You like us. Do we not get BI hoodies?
I've got a BI hoodie.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
What's with this?
I don't know.
I loved you guys before. All right.
Got to know people.
All right, hook us up with the latest.
Yeah, anybody want an HPE hoodie these days?
Look, I think that expectations were pretty low coming in, given that NetApp had missed, given that Cisco was weak, given that Nutanix was uninspiring. So the bar was set pretty low, and they came in, give or take, in line with the bar from
you don't sound
earnings
excited.
Perspective. I am not excited. I think this is the start of potentially next couple of quarters that is going to be weak as well, because remember, HPE, NetApp, Cisco are disproportionately exposed to corporate IT spending, sort of less exposed to server and storage buying. So they fall in the bucket of Dell and others. So what's going to happen is corporates are going to see their revenue be compromised, if you may, over the next couple of quarters. They're going to hit the brakes on spending, and that's going to sort of flow down to IT spending for the likes of HPE and Cisco.
And so what to make of the stock reaction? I mean, I guess, now it's down about 1.5%, but I mean, it really popped down and then came back up. I mean, are investors just a little bit sort of confused by everything at this point?
No, I think, this is not a revenue growth story.
Yeah.
This is not a revenue growth story. They're going to make earnings depending on how financial services and the leasing business does for them. They have a big arm that finances their customers' purchases. The other part of it is their edge business has been sort of volatile. This is the business they acquired a couple of years ago, or the Aruba business, if you remember. And that business did a little bit better. Relative to our model, compute was give or take in line. Storage was in line. The edge business was 50-60 million better. And overall, slightly better revenues relative to our model, although versus consensus it's below. And for the full year, they maintained their EPS guidance, but the cash flow guidance is off by $300 million. So I think that's something that's noteworthy that for a company without revenue growth, you have to look at that.
Yeah, revenue growth, right? This is what we want to see. So what's the problem with HPE?
So, I mean, look, they're in the wrong place, which is corporate IT spending is becoming disproportionately allocated to the cloud. That's one part of it. And the other part of it is that the business itself has become more volatile. And you have coronavirus going into it. So all of these sort of accelerate the picture and then make it sort of somewhere in the -3, -4 corporate IT spending. Remember, these are big spending items. So if you want to dampen IT spending, a bulk of it is maintenance. So if you X out the maintenance piece of it, how are you going to compress IT spending? You stop buying servers, you stop buying storage, you stop buying networking.
I do wonder, as you look at the sector that you follow, especially with the virus, I wonder if the virus is going to kind of lay bare some really core problems at various companies, right? That, you know what I mean? When things start to slow down, I understand that this is kind of an anomaly, I guess you could say, but nonetheless, you get to see, okay, what's really going on at these companies that they don't have kind of a safety net of some sort to get them through maybe a quarter or two.
Right. From a technology architecture standpoint, this is going to be, which of the emperors have no clothes.
That's exactly what I was thinking in my head. Yeah.
Right? So you're going to, which of these companies have pivoted to distributed computing models?
Yeah.
They've adopted the remote workforce in full gusto. They have their failover systems in the cloud or in-house, whatever have you. All of those have to be in place. If you're trying to re-architect your system now, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you expect to hear, if anything, on the HPE call?
So one of the things that we're consistently looking for is the demand delta versus the supply impediment. And one of the things we are also hearing yesterday, NXPI pre-announced negatively, but the pre-announcement is actually much better than people had expected. And they said that China demand is actually improved in the 2 weeks after the first 2 weeks of the Lunar New Year. So are we seeing some of that? Are we seeing some stabilization from the earlier impacted nations? So can we extrapolate the same pattern into the Western world, for example? That's number one on the demand side. On the supply side, if you look at what Hon Hai said, which is the assembler of iPhones, for example, a very efficient one, they said that at the end of February, they were about half utilized. Right. So from a factory utilization perspective. And they hope to be 90% utilized by the end of March. So can we extrapolate that same utilization levels from a production standpoint to the hardware industry? Those are the two questions that I have. Because if we're done deal by April, then potentially the 2020 year is not affected.
Right. But this is it. We keep waiting for these parameters. Shares of HPE, by the way, now down about 3.4%. Anand Srinivasan, thank you. Senior semiconductor hardware analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence in our interactive broker studio. Certainly with the names, Jason, we'll watch tomorrow.
Coming up, a look at Super Tuesday. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Sellers returned to Wall Street after a one-day respite. The market gave back more than half of Monday's gains on fears that the Fed's latest effort would not be enough to blunt the impact of the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled 786. The S&P 500 plunged 87. The Nasdaq Composite slid 268. The Fed slashed interest rates by 0.5 percentage point, its first emergency move since 2008. But Chairman Jay Powell acknowledged that the Fed doesn't have all the answers. Fed policymakers next meet in about 2 weeks. J.P. Morgan Chase is asking thousands of its U.S. employees to work from home to test its contingency plans should it need to close U.S. offices. Managers have asked about 10% of its consumer bank employees to work remotely. Columbia University is suspending all school-related student travel as coronavirus spreads, and it encouraged other Ivy League schools to do the same. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing... This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
Martin here's a builder. He needs his payroll to run like a really smooth drill thingy. That's why he uses QuickBooks to accurately calculate his employees' pay and automatically submit to HMRC.
Pay less on every pay run until 31st of July. Offer ends 30th of April.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow jumper, up and good!
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game, North Carolina at Duke.
Two for the win! No, tapped up by Moore! And in at the buzzer! Moore makes it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball and TuneIn, hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Develop plants, how you're going to develop vegetation and farming. That sort of thought process happens at NGIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NGIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
So there's a lot going on. We got that Fed emergency rate cut, markets shrugging it off. And then, oh yeah, folks, it's Super Tuesday.
We're going to catch up with none other than Kevin Torelli down in D.C. in just a minute. He is not even probably halfway through his day. But first, Charlie
I just want to
Pellet.
know what he's eating.
Oh, yeah. Or drinking or like fueling.
He eats amazing things.
All right. Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on what's going on in the business world. Hey, Charlie.
All right, let's begin with HP Enterprise, topic you guys were just talking about with Anand Srinivasan. HP Enterprise cutting its full-year free cash flow forecast. Shares tumbling now by 3.9%. Apple now restricting employee travel to Italy and South Korea after recently instating a similar policy for China as the coronavirus outbreak continues to spread. And Google is calling off its flagship conference as the latest event cancellation as concern about the coronavirus grows among businesses. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all tumbling today. Stocks declining, treasuries surged as investors worried the Fed's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. Bob Michael is Chief Investment Officer and Head of Global Fixed Income, Currencies and Commodities at J.P. Morgan Asset Management.
I think it's been quite stunning, but I feel it was the fair and appropriate move by the Fed to step in here. You cannot stand back and watch what's going on and say we're going to wait for the data.
And interest-sensitive stocks tumbling today as well. J.P. Morgan Chase, for example, lower by 3.75%. Citigroup among the bank stocks lower by 3.8%. Bank of America tumbling by 5.5%. Gold up today by 3%. $16.37 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1%, $47.24 a barrel. Recapping, stocks lower. S&P 500 index down 86 points today, a drop of 2.8%. The Dow down 785 points, down 2.9%. NASDAQ down 268 points, a drop of 3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
I've got soul, and I'm super bad.
Super Tuesday, man. Here it is.
Here it is. Kev Cirilli's with us, and he's fired up.
I'm
right?
ready. I got to say, I do eat good food, Carol.
I know you do. We have these conversations.
No,
about
I know.
In the newsroom about you and your food.
So I last night I had a peanut butter banana shake.
Good
that's
for you.
Kind of what I'm.
Did it keep you
on.
going? Like, what do you do to keep going?
Run. I run a lot.
Did you go for a nice run this morning? What were you thinking? All right, this is a quasi serious question, Kev. You're on your run. You're sort of thinking about it. You know, your I was going to say your BlackBerry, your iPhone, everything is aside. Twitter, nothing. Nobody's calling you. What are you thinking about prepping for this particular Super Tuesday?
Is there going to be a shakeup, or is there going to be an unexpected event? Whether it's election security, that's where my mind is. You know, could there be a left field thing? And is there going to be a major upset? And I think that if you're outside of Washington trying to figure out what does the current dynamics of the race mean for the Democratic Party, things are playing out precisely as to be expected. I mean, last week when I was on your show, we talked about how after South Carolina, candidates would drop out and there would be endorsements, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, like whatever, I predicted right. I'm saying it because this really does feel like a two-person race. And it feels that Elizabeth Warren and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, of course, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the primary stakeholder of Bloomberg Radio, it feels like they're each in this race right now to act as a counterbalance for Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, beyond that, it feels like a two-person race between Sanders and Biden. And if you're watching this tonight and watching the returns come in, look to see if Biden will be able to successfully make the case that if he doesn't overperform tonight, it's because of one of those other two candidates. It's almost as if the additional of those candidates provides him some wiggle room to say, well, I'm not ahead of the delegates because I had all of these other candidates who are now supporting me, backing me, and they're going to give me their delegates. But if only we could get these other people out of the race, then I would be able to stop Sanders.
So when it comes down to it, though, I think, the Democrats care about beating President Trump. Who is the most viable candidate at this point? What are polls telling us? What are you hearing?
So it's such a great question, and this is one of the reasons why I think polls for Democrats are so flawed, is because if you talk to a Bernie Sanders supporter, none of them are saying, I'm supporting Bernie Sanders and I think that Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump better than Bernie. No one says that. Yeah. I mean, you think that your candidate is the best equipped to defeat Donald Trump. So I inherently think that polling question is flawed because of that very reason. I think the question for Sanders is going to be, can he successfully say that he can unify the party while also having a revolutionary structural change-driven message. And that's what I'm going to be looking for between now and 2 weeks from now on the next batch of primaries in Arizona, for example, is can he say that can he give I don't want to say a wink and a nod, but a wink and a nod for lack in the political sense that would say that he would be able to form a coalition with the Democratic establishment.
And Elizabeth Warren, talk to us about what she needs to see to stay in this, or is that a moot point, or is that not even important at this point?
I think it's important in the sense that, so there's 3 points that I would quickly make about Senator Warren. The first is that her relationship with former Vice President Biden is incredibly complex and layered. Look, I mean, Biden, having represented Delaware, is a state with a large financial services industry. Yeah. He governed very differently than Senator Warren does currently. However, the second point that I would make is that they did the political dance, so to speak. They did work together on some issues. And if you're Biden trying to inherit the progressive wing, she's someone who will, without question, be on his vice presidential shortlist should that happen. But finally, I would note, we all saw the debates. Yeah. I mean, we all saw the dynamic between Bloomberg and Warren. And so long as each of them stay on the stage, I think, what's the reason for them getting out?
Yeah. I mean, are you anticipating anybody drops out tomorrow?
I honestly think it depends. I think it really depends. I think if you're, again, if for Biden, he's going to be pushing that he could have done better if the moderates were unified around him. Yeah. And so expect to hear a lot of that.
All right. We will be watching tonight special coverage starting at, I believe, 7 p.m. Wall Street time. Kevin Cirilli and David Weston. So tune in here. 14 states and a territory voting tonight. So a lot to look forward to. And we know they're going to be looking ahead as well, going back to what we were talking about with Rick Davis earlier. So much to come. And then tune in at 5 p.m. if you are in the nation's capital listening to 99.1 Kevin Cirilli and Sound On. He will get you all prepped and ready to go.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the U.S. drug supply chain in light of the virus. In the meantime, back to Roll the Nap with Bob Moon.
Carol, as the coronavirus death toll rose to 9 today in the state of Washington, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell voiced hope the Senate can pass an emergency funding package this week to fight the virus. There was a teleconference update today from Dr. Nancy Messonnier of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Right now, we have 12 states that have reported cases of COVID-19. Many of these have occurred within the past 14 days, meaning that we may still find contacts of cases in those states who test positive for COVID-19.
Millions are voting on this Super Tuesday in primary elections from Maine to California that could profoundly shape the race for the Democratic presidential nomination. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who has energized liberals and young voters, is hoping to pull away from the rest of the field. He spoke outside his polling place in Burlington, Vermont.
Today is obviously a very, very important day, and we look forward to doing well.
At the same time, former Vice President Joe Biden is looking for a boost from a wave of momentum and endorsements from recent dropouts in the race. Even as billionaire Michael Bloomberg is appearing on the ballot for the first time today, he's acknowledging that his only path to the nomination is likely through a convention fight. And he indicated to reporters that he may not win any states on this Super Tuesday.
I think we're going to do very well. Looking forward to it.
What are your expectations? Would a third place finish be good?
If there's only 3 candidates, you can't do worse than that.
Well, there is Elizabeth Warren also.
I didn't realize she's still in. Is she?
Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg radio parent Bloomberg LP. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take. By Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and good.
This week, we have a must-hear game, North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win! No, tapped up by Moore! And in at the buzzer! Moore makes it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Movies like Contagion and Outbreak, not to mention all the cell phone images from disease-stricken countries, have made Americans pandemic voyeurs.
Now, for the first time, we're facing the probability that we will not just be witnessing, we'll be experiencing. And then we'll find out, what is the mettle of Americans?
Catch this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Provided by Pershing Advisors Solutions, LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon, N.A. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the space spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelota. Down day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all slumping today. S&P 500 index down 86 points on a day when the Federal Reserve cut rates by 50 basis points. That was a drop today for the S&P of 2.8%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 785 points, a decline there of 2.9%. NASDAQ lower by 268 points, a drop of 3%. 10-year, the yield now 0.99% on the 10-year. Gold up 3.2%, $16.39 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up by 0.9%. Right now, $47.19 a barrel. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise reported sales that fell short of Wall Street estimates, signaling weaker corporate demand for servers amid macroeconomic concerns and the ongoing shift to cloud computing. After hours, we have got shares trading lower of HPE down now by just about 4.3%. Nordstrom also after hours, it forecast adjusted earnings per share for the full year. The guidance midpoint missing the average analyst estimate. Shares of Nordstrom, they are also trading lower, down now by about 7.4%. Facebook and its partners are considering redesigning the Libra cryptocurrency project so that the network accepts multiple coins, including those issued by central banks, in an effort to woo reluctant global regulators and rebuild momentum for the plan. Recapping, S&P down 86, down 2.8%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
So, Jason, concerns about the coronavirus have also heightened worries about the U.S. drug supply chain. Mike Alkire is president of the healthcare improvement and supply chain company Premier Inc. They're based in Charlotte, North Carolina, in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio here on this Tuesday, and just a little bit going on here. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do. I was reading the website, exactly how you get involved in the supply chain and really helping to improve kind of the healthcare industry.
Sure. First, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
So first of all, Premier is a healthcare system, or an organization that's owned 43% by our healthcare systems. And it really was primarily focused on bringing the cost of supplies down. So that was leveraging the scale of all of our healthcare systems to go to the market and drive the price down. Over the years, what we've evolved to is actually vertically integrating the supply chain, meaning we'll actually contract manufacture for products. So, you talked a little bit about the drug supply. So one of the big issues for our healthcare systems are drugs that often are on the drug shortage list. They're hard to get. These are basic drugs. Think of things like morphine and propofol, things that healthcare systems need every single day. So we created a subsidiary organization called Provide RX. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we invest capital with small but high quality manufacturers of generic drugs.
So why is it that we have shortage of supplies?
Sure. So let me start by saying, what's related to this virus.
Because I've never been in a hospital or with a doctor and they're like, I'm sorry, we can't get that for you. So,
I ran into that during flu season when they ran out of Tamiflu in Westchester.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So typically what will happen in a hospital is they won't perform a procedure if they don't think they have enough drugs.
Right.
But what they'll do if there is a drug that's in short supply is they'll have options, other drugs they'll use. So let's just say a generic is out of stock. They'll use a branded. It just costs more to actually have that procedure done.
Okay.
But what's I think caused it all is over the years the system itself, in a search to drive down cost, has really narrowed the supply chain. So a lot of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, those are the raw materials that make up a drug, are actually 13% are actually produced in China. And then there's a pretty significant, maybe 15% or so that are produced in India. So those products, when we can't actually get access to the API, those drugs go in short supply.
But that's done to drive down costs, right?
It is. So
which blows my mind because pharmaceuticals are still so expensive.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you put your head around that?
So think generics. So these are the drugs that, have come down significantly. So now everybody's trying to figure out, how do I squeeze every penny out of the supply chain to actually bring that generic drug to you for $10 a script? Or in the hospital, it's an injectable or something that's done intravenously.
And so how much of this, help us understand, Mike, how much of this is just the private sector, sort of scrambling to do what they need to do? How much of it is pressure from the administration, the federal government, different agencies? Like, help us understand the moving parts here.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So what we're most worried about is not just the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the 13% that the FDA says is produced in China, but there's 80%. If you've ever looked at a drug and you see active ingredient, there's all these other ingredients. And in some cases, for a lot of our pharma drugs, 80% of that's produced in China.
Wow.
That's what the big worry is.
80% of the non-active ingredients.
Exactly.
But if it was such a worry, then why didn't it become a bigger worry when it was 40% or 50%? I mean, if we're really going to talk about it, who's responsible? Do you blame the publicly held pharmaceutical companies who just want to increase their profits? Like, who do you blame?
No, it's interesting. I actually think there's a role here for the FDA. I think we have to bring transparency into the entire supply chain. It's not good enough to know that the active pharmaceutical ingredient is produced in India or China. We need to know where those other ingredients are being produced. And the FDA doesn't have the either interest or have the capability to actually understand where those products are being produced. And we have to understand that if we want to solve this issue.
How big a problem is it? I mean, give me an idea. How many procedures don't get done because they don't have the right drugs or something?
So, for the most part, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Procedures are still getting done, but you're going to use high-cost alternative therapies.
So how much does this increase the cost of healthcare?
So hundreds of millions of dollars. And we've got statistics year after year where it's hundreds of millions of dollars for care that doesn't necessarily have to be provided, but that has to be provided because we have a shortage.
So how do we fix it? What's step number one?
So, I think we've got to get more pressure from the FDA to understand what's happening from a production standpoint in the supply chain. Who is actually manufacturing product in the supply chain? That's the raw goods that make up the active pharmaceutical ingredient that make up the drug itself. So we've got to bring more transparency. Two, I don't know if you this just came out today. India announced that they are no longer going to ship 13 active pharmaceutical ingredients and 13 drugs. They're embargoing them. They're not shipping them. Those are drugs. Think of they're drugs that are antibiotics.
Yeah.
Those are drugs like vitamin nutritionals. Drugs that we have to have if there's an epidemic of a disease.
One of the things we've talked about from a preparedness standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint, from so many angles is that the coronavirus is a wake-up call in some ways.
Yeah.
Could this be the catalyst to sort of help people get a little bit more momentum to change the system?
So two things. I sure hope it is. I've been talking about this basically since 2010. I think not just from a drug standpoint, but I want you guys to hear also from a mask standpoint. So face masks, personal protective attire.
Just got about 40 seconds left.
Okay. In peak times, so non-virus times, we use about 20 million masks a year.
Okay.
When there's a virus, we use an annualized number about 40 million. Our ability to produce is 50 million. And you saw HHS Secretary Azar come out and said if there was a big pandemic or an epidemic, we're going to require 300 million masks. We can no longer afford for a fragile supply chain. We've got to be able to produce some of these products either domestically or near shore.
Yeah. All right. Well, a lot of big questions being raised and some solutions as well. We really appreciate it. Mike Alkire, president of Premier Inc., based down in Charlotte, NC.
Yeah.
Town we've been to.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much
for your
coming
time
in
today. All right. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk more about the coronavirus.
Yeah, we are. And we do want to remind everybody, of course, we're talking about the virus, we're talking about markets, but for those of you listening, because we're also talking politics, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, Jason and I, we're going to be here. But if you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in the nation's capital, Sound On with Kevin Cirilli. That is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We're going to continue talking, yes, about the virus, but we've also got some lighter fare to take you out on this Tuesday. This is Bloomberg.
A pack needs someone to follow. Don't look now, but they're behind you. Bloomberg Daybreak.
Could we see the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Imports declined 2.8%.
On Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. Okay, millennial, when we baby boomers say summers aren't what they used to be, for once, we might be right. According to research from the Australia Institute think tank, summers on the continent are now a month longer than they were in the 1950s as climate change upends traditional weather patterns. The researchers found that between 1999 and 2018, Australian summers were 31 days longer than the mid-20th century average, with 23 fewer days of winter temperatures. The picture was even more dramatic in some regional centers, with the likes of Port Macquarie, a coastal holiday town about 4 hours' drive north of Sydney, seeing 7 more weeks of summer. While longer summers and shorter winters may sound like bliss, that is so superficial. In a land already coping with climatic extremes, longer summers also increase the risk of extreme heat, which is of particular danger to the young and elderly. So no, that is not okay with me.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Tuesday, stocks tumbled, treasuries surged as investors worried the Federal Reserve's emergency cut won't be enough to combat the economic impact of coronavirus. S&P down 86 points today. That was a drop of 2.8%, ending the session just above 3,000 to 3,003. The Dow tumbled 785 points, down 2.9%. At the worst level of the day, we had the Dow down by almost 1,000 points. Nasdaq dropped to 268 points, lower by 3%. The 10-year yield right now 0.99%. Gold $1,640 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.8%, $47.10 a barrel. So the S&P down for the 8th time in 9 days, following the Fed's 50 basis point cut of its benchmark rate. Fed Chair Jay Powell said during the press conference that the U.S. economy does remain strong, but the virus outbreak will weigh on activity, quote, for some time.
So what changed really was, I would say, over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've seen a broader spread of the virus. We've seen it begin to spread a bit here in the United States. But for us, what really matters, of course, is not the epidemiology, but the risk to the economy. So we saw a risk to the outlook for the economy and chose to act.
And again, that 10-year 0.99%. After earnings today, Target tumbled 3%. Kohl Stores also have their earnings this morning, down 2.6%. After the bell, news out of Facebook. Facebook and its partners are redesigning the Libra cryptocurrency project so the network accepts multiple coins, including those issued by central banks. This all part of an effort to woo reluctant global regulators and rebuild momentum for the plan. A couple of after-the-bell earnings reports. HP Enterprise, HPE on the ticker there. Its shares down by 6%. Nordstrom tumbling by 7.8%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
I know a place. Ain't nobody crying.
So you do wonder about where folks are going to be going. Where's the place that they're going to be hiding as we start to see more cases of the coronavirus?
Still working or engaging something.
Right. You think about the virtual world, right?
Yeah.
Working, living, and all that good stuff. Amber Atherton is back with us, CEO of San Francisco-based Zypher, a marketing software company. She joined us in the past.
Zypher.
Did I say it wrong? Did I say Zypher?
You said Zypher.
I'm sorry.
Zypher.
Zypher. I'll add an H. Zypher. Last time first of all, welcome back.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here.
Great to have you here. And last time we talked a lot about authentic content and how that resonates with consumers, with brands specifically. I do wonder about, as the virus continues on and folks are isolated more and maybe they're communicating more with virtual communities, whether it's a work one, whether it's a social one. What do you anticipate? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think, you just have to look to China to see what's happening there on social media. Obviously, TikTok is still massive as a broadcasting platform over there. And it's really the rise of these virtual communities, and live streaming is a massive opportunity right now for all retailers and brands.
Are people tapping into it already?
Not yet, but I think in China what we're seeing is more concerts being live streamed, and live streaming on Twitch is diversifying just outside of gaming. It's also about shopping and cooking. So I think this is a really fantastic opportunity for brands and retailers to tap into that massive community of gamers and live streams.
And so what should a brand be thinking about? Because it could be sort of intimidating, especially for companies that aren't, as they say, sort of digitally native. What are the secrets to sort of getting it off the ground, being successful, and engaging, as we alluded to, in sort of an authentic way and not being sort of clumsy about it?
Yeah, I think, Zyper's expertise is about identifying a brand's true fans, and so I think it's really trying to dive into where your fans are and what do they care about. Do they care about gaming? Because there's no point doing that if it's not going to resonate with your audience. But I think this is going to be a great wake-up call to test new innovative products, because Facebook is still starting to lose increasing relevance with Gen Z.
It's so interesting what you said about concerts. We have a story in the magazine this week that talks about the carbon footprint left by massive concerts because of the amount of people that you've got to move around on planes and vans and buses and all that good stuff. And there are really well-known musicians who are saying, you know what, we're not going to tour this time around because we're concerned about the environment. And I do wonder about...
And that doesn't even have anything to do with coronavirus. That's just like...
No, right.
Yeah,
but I do wonder about how we're starting to rethink that, more people who go to concerts do